Oh.
So I also added on the Twitter account, there's something cool that Twitter's doing, which is they bought this newsletter company called Review. And if you sign up to be a newsletter, to have a newsletter on Review, they give you this special space in your Twitter bio above your top tweet, but below your bio, where it says, here's my newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter. So I made a Tech News Around the World newsletter that people can subscribe to. And then I'm thinking, what should we include in it? And I'm thinking what to include is like the biggest story of the week and then what we were able to figure out about it. Like we figured out that Facebook's going to be called Horizon most likely, and then we could include the link to the trademark registration and, just kind of cool shit where stuff we figured out that week.
Is it just me? But I just think that name is ridiculous. I think it's just going to ruin the whole brand, don't you think?
Well,
It's just a weird name because everyone's using
Horizon,
Facebook and
I'll
it
to be
just has a
totally honest,
different
I
image.
kind of like it. I like it.
I just don't think it fits the brand. It doesn't fit. It just sounds.
Well,
It sounds
I
weird.
I think that's by intent. I think they want something that makes you forget about the brand of Facebook.
Yes,
Oh,
and
okay. In that case, it makes sense.
I think the word horizon has a good meaning. The only concern for me is not that unique as a name that's used by a lot of people.
Good point.
Even my friend in Singapore lives in the Horizon Towers, by the way.
And then, but I like Horizon because it's a very visual word, and that's another hint that I think that it's the right brand because they want to go into being the internet is about to become entirely visual in AR and VR. So it is kind of appropriate in that sense. And they want to be global in their ambition. So on many fronts it works.
I'm sure they've got it figured out.
Yep. We are 3 minutes past the top of the hour.
Okay,
and
we
the
ready?
Music is finished. Yes, we are ready.
Audio effects. Okay, where's the...
Let's go.
Pew, pew, pew. The top story today, happy Thursday, October 21st. We're still in 2021, believe it or not. And the top story today is from Bloomberg that they have sources that PayPal has approached Pinterest about an acquisition, potentially valuing it at $39 billion. Pinterest stock had dropped 16% this year, but is now up 10% on the news that they might be acquired by PayPal. And let's see if Bloomberg, who wrote this article, mentioned the words social commerce in this blog, in their post here. Let's see. Social they do not. They mention the word social 8 times. They mention the word commerce 3 times. But let's see. Pinterest offers a visual search and scrapbooking platform where users can save, collect, and group images by themes. It benefited in the early stage of the pandemic as advertisers flocked to social media sites to woo a captive audience that embrace a shift to e-commerce. So you kind of got it. You kind of got it. You're calling it, they are shifting to e-commerce. That's true. But that's called, when a social platform transitions to e-commerce, that's called social commerce, Bloomberg. It's this hot new thing that the kids are doing it. All the cool kids. There's this place called Asia, Bloomberg. And in Asia, they're doing this thing called social commerce. And it's big. It's really big. It's even bigger than you, Bloomberg. In fact, it's 100 times bigger than you. And maybe 1,000. And in aggregate, across all the apps, maybe 10,000 times bigger than you. So you should probably be familiar with this thing. It's kind of like rice. There's this stuff called rice that people eat. You should check that shit out too. It's quite popular in other parts of the world that you don't really seem to know about. And this thing, social commerce, is quite big. You should familiarize yourself about it if you're going to write articles about it, about why PayPal's actually buying Bloomberg. Sorry, PayPal's buying Pinterest. I gotta admire. I gotta say, PayPal is really actually. I have to applaud them. That's normally a company. In fact, they were a company that kind of just laid over and started dying. And as all the startups started innovating and surpassing them, most notably Square. And then Square started just innovating as they're doing. My God, are they innovating? And PayPal realized, shit, we're going to get totally slaughtered in our sleep by Square if we don't wake up and join that race. And they did. And they woke up and they bought the most direct Square competitor of all, which is called iZettle, which is the Square of Europe, which is run by somebody who I consider a friend in Stockholm. And it's basically identically Square, except in the US, Square was based on the magnetic stripe on the back of the card. In Europe, iZettle's based on the little chip in the card, because in Europe, we used chips, not magnetic stripes. And so you had to put the whole card in the thing. Anyway, they sold iZettle for $2 billion to PayPal. And yeah, PayPal, ever since then, and that was about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, they've continued to understand the threat of Square and take it very seriously and innovate, adding crypto, adding this, adding that, all kinds of shit. Wow. And now they want to get into social commerce. This is what a legacy company should do. Stay innovative, buy up the hot shit, stay ahead of the curve. So in a weird way, I applaud it, because we normally just, this is the equivalent of Blockbuster potentially buying Netflix or a Netflix-like player. Once Netflix is already coming and kicking their ass, they're like, shit, who else could we buy? Oh, Hulu. Let's buy Hulu. This is like Netflix buying Hulu. And boy, wouldn't that have been a smart move at that time. So in a weird way, I admire it. A dinosaur refusing to die. Quite remarkable. Okay. Let's see if there's a quote from either of the players here. No, but what's interesting is Bloomberg said they had sources. So who are these sources exactly? It says that PayPal is exploring $45 billion acquisition of social media company Pinterest in what could be the biggest technology deal of the year, and move the payments company closer to its ambitions of becoming a super app. And I did say that was coming, that the fintechs were going to try and become super apps. Messi can verify, as a fellow predictor of sorts, that the fintechs are going to try and become the super apps. This is what happened in Asia. This is another thing that happened huge in Asia. And to that, I applaud you, Bloomberg. You understand what a super app is. And what is more interesting is that it's actually the fintechs that are best positioned to become the super apps, because you need the financial transactions underneath to enable all of the additional products and services that you build on top of the super app. And that's why you're seeing most notably Revolut starting to add all kinds of products and features, which is a fintech. It's a neobank, in fact. And PayPal could too, and they are, and it's very cool. So, but who are your sources here, Bloomberg? It doesn't really say in the article. It's kind of weird. Okay, so the second biggest story, by the way, that one's also being covered by the New York Times, Reuters, CNBC, TechCrunch, Wall Street Journal, Engadget, TechSpot, and a whole bunch of CNN. What does CNN say? Pinterest shares soar on reports PayPal might buy it. And there's a whole bunch of tweets as well, including from Jason Del Rey. He says PayPal is never getting into the Amazon checkout flow, and ton of future of e-commerce growth will come from discovery social commerce, stuff you want versus stuff you need. Well, that's one way to say it, stuff you want versus stuff you need. Another way to say it is passive versus active discovery or shopping, passive shopping versus active shopping. Stuff you need would be fit. He's kind of torturing it and oversimplifying it. Stuff you need is active shopping. Stuff you want would be passive shopping, passive discovery. And there's actually a huge fundamental difference between these two things that is actually worth highlighting here. Chris Mencia, who's a really smart geek, says, and now having apparently missed the creator economy opportunity, PayPal might buy the company. Yeah. The key difference, and this is really kind of an interesting point to raise in the future of e-commerce, is that passive versus active discovery or shopping was born out of how people use the internet generally. You have passive and active internet usage. For example, on YouTube, you have passive content and you have active content discovery. Active means you know what you want and you go searching for it. It's the stuff you put into the search bar. I'm looking for X. That's active discovery. You can do that in terms of content. You can do that in terms of products to buy. So when you go to Amazon, Amazon's almost entirely active. You're searching for X. You type it in the bar. I want lollipops. There's lollipops. Thank you. I want to see a video about, the declining birth rate in China. Here's a video about the declining birth rate in China. Active discovery, active consumption. Passive is what people are doing on TikTok. There's no search bar. I don't really care what you show me. I'm just sitting back. You show me what's interesting. This is passive. If you're going to feed me grapes, great. Grapes are okay. I'll eat grapes. That's passive consumption. So as this person says, what you want versus what you need, there are two different types of e-commerce. There's and there's two different types of shopping. Some people go to the shopping mall wanting to just randomly potentially see, some people go to the shopping mall, only go out shopping when they know there's something they want to buy. If they're not actually needing something, they don't go into an environment where they might see stuff that they don't know they need to buy. Some people are like, you know what, I'm bored. Let's walk around the shopping mall and see if something tickles our fancy. That's passive shopping. And when you go to a shopping mall, you have both simultaneously. Some people are there actively shopping. Some people are there passively shopping. Amazon. Yeah.
My husband versus me. That's what it is.
Yeah. It has, over the ages been simplified to be kind of representative of how men and women shop. Men are more active shoppers. Women are more passive, can do a lot more passive shopping than say men do, generally, to oversimplify. However, and it'd be interesting to see if that's true in the digital realm as well. Pinterest would seem to imply that Pinterest's users are predominantly female or women, and Pinterest is more of a passive experience, similar to TikTok. And Instagram also a bit more passive. Google and Amazon a bit more active. But they know they're active and they want to keep you there. And Netflix as well starts off being a bit active, turns into a bit of passive. It's kind of a bit of both. So once somebody comes in as an active shopper, you want to try and convert them into a passive shopper. And, supermarkets do this too at the checkout aisle. They're like, oh, you didn't come in looking for bubblegum and batteries, but hey, while you're on your way out, how does this chocolate bar sound? They put all the sugary shit right there at the cash register. So, it's
Tyler, of note,
yes.
that used to be where you'd get the tabloids, but now you get tabloids everywhere.
So it's going to be interesting to see how passive, by the way, AR shopping in this inevitable future that we've already outlined very clearly, which I haven't really seen anyone else express it so clearly, where you're wearing AR glasses and you're walking around town and every possible thing you see is clickable and buyable. That's passive. But boy, is that passive in a new way that, holy cow, does that give a crazy boost for passive shopping.
Hey, Tyler,
yes.
2 points.
Yeah.
I know the co-founder of Pinterest, Evan Sharp, so he actually joined Johnny Ive's studio.
A few days ago, yeah.
Yeah, so there are hints of it actually happening. And then you talked about the social shopping. Well, Pinterest already has that technology where you can search visually and it'll pop. Now think about it when the person searches for something they want to buy and they can just pop. It'll just like show up on the screen when they're searching visually through your image or through your camera, and then you can just buy instantly through that.
Yeah, and Michelle from who happens to work at Facebook is in the audience, DM'd me a great point, which is that passive is going to become a bigger and bigger part of the e-commerce pie, because these algorithms are going to get smarter and smarter based on data and data and data, all the juicy data, all the sensors, all your history of browsing, everything, and where your eyeballs are looking and your heart rate. And oh my God, they're going to use all that data. They can't really influence your active shopping so much. They can wildly improve your passive shopping, because what they recommend to you, both in terms of products and content, like in Netflix, what movies you see, and Facebook and all these big data-driven companies are going to get better and better and better at recommending more and more stuff in the passive that is more and more relevant to you based on all of the data they're collecting. So passive is going to explode.
Tyler, you hit the nail on the head there. When I was doing some in-person shopping, you realize that that's the element. The passive element is the part of shopping in person that makes the experience. Because I'm always talking about Target here. Southern California, we live off of Target, and one thing that's changed our life is we use the app and we just pick it up in our car. But occasionally, as a treat, we'll go walk Target, because it's COVID time. And it's when you walk the floor and you see these bizarre things you didn't even think about that suddenly are on your mind, and you're suddenly, considering buying it and stuff. So it's that element of internet shopping, because Amazon, you just go, what you're looking for, and then it's just a ranked algorithm. When you're in Target, it's been curated. And yeah, that's about all I had to say. Sorry about that. And then Shaheen and some friends are down in the audience.
Okay, thank you. So that's the top story. But because passive is going to explode, and Jay's exactly right. There's elements of active even in Pinterest, where you can use the Pinterest app. You can show it a photo of something you actively are interested in, and it will say, "Oh, okay, you want red Nike shoes? Okay, great. Here's tons of that shit, and a whole bunch of other things that we think you might be interested in." So it's that hybrid of passive and active. So it's a good time to be a social media company that's pivoting to e-commerce. 45 billion. That's big. That's a lot of bees. And Evan, as you mentioned, wow, what a huge payday for Pinterest. The next story is from The Verge and a whole bunch of others, that Microsoft begins letting Windows 11 beta testers try Android apps inside of Windows. And they said they were going to do this a couple months ago. And then Windows 11 came out and it wasn't ready. And they said, sorry, the Android app integration is not ready yet. And everyone went, oh, boo, you said we're going to have candy for Christmas. And now they're letting it, now they're bringing the candy. It's not, a month or two later. But this is wild, because in the Android App Store, you have apps like Apple Music is inside the Android store. And now you're going to have Apple Music in Microsoft Windows for the first time. That's kind of a wild concept. You're going to have they're starting with 50 apps, including Kindle, Apple Music, Signal on Windows. That's kind of cool. Running Android apps, mobile apps, inside a desktop operating system, Windows 11. It's super cool. So and then there's The Verge does a separate piece saying, a first look at Android app support for Windows 11. The apps are nicely integrated, run well, and installing them is simple, only requiring Amazon's App Store app. So it's basically the apps that you're able to choose from are inside of Amazon's App Store. And that's why the Kindle is one of those. So the next one is a site called Platformer, which is Casey Newton, who's, a tech journalist. He's written for quite a few publications over the years, and he's quite active on Twitter. And he says he has sources that Mark Zuckerberg has not settled on a new name for Facebook, which could be announced as early as Monday. Right. He's going to announce it Monday, and he doesn't know what it is. Casey, there's these things called trademarks. He's only going to be able to announce a name that's trademarked. And he would have had to have done that already, Casey. Let's use a little critical thinking, Casey. Casey, that wet noodle between your ears, let's turn that thing on for a second and let's employ a little bit of logic to this scenario. You think he's going to make up a name over the weekend?
So Horizon is not confirmed then.
Well, no. I'll bet money on it if anyone would like to bet money on it.
Zuckerverse.
The Zuckerverse. Oh my God, soon to mania. I think
I really hope they come up with a different name. I know Horizon.
the
Kind of,
Zuckerverse.
it fits where they're going.
We'll check
They're going in the
if
future, but
Zuckerverse is trademark.
Let's go ahead and check the trademark on Zuckerverse, Cheryl. And Zuckerverse, let's just find out who has registered Zuckerverse.com, because that would be very insightful in and of itself. Apparently, my buddy Jason has chimed in on this one, saying, fairly obvious, Zuckerberg is going to create a corporate holding company like Google did, like Alphabet, then promote or hire a CEO and make himself chairman. Then, like Larry Page or Jeff Bezos, he won't have to show up for any hearings in the Senate or Congress. Yep. Jason, my buddy, who is, you can see in my bio, is the person who invited me into Clubhouse. As usual, Jason's wicked smart, by the way. Super brilliant. Has been in the game from day one and is one of the biggest angel investors in the game. And he's right. There's no question he's right. Jane,
So Tyler,
yes?
Zuckerverse was registered in July of 2021, which coincides with didn't he say in July that they were going to change the name?
The trademark for Horizon was done at the same time. So our friend Jane Wong in Hong Kong found, untweeted, and responded to Casey Newton on Twitter, where Casey, in addition to writing his blog post saying that it's about the web address for meta.com, M-E-T-A, meta, like metaverse, meta.com. Casey says, regarding the new Facebook name, the web address meta.com currently redirects to meta.org, the home of a biomedical research discovery tool developed under the stewardship of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. And Chan is Mark Zuckerberg's wife's family name. So the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative is the steward under which a biomedical research discovery tool currently is the home of meta.com and meta.org. So it's potentially possible that it could be Meta. The name of the company is Meta. So let's do a trademark search on the word Meta, M-E-T-A.
Meta World Peace.
Tyler, I've
Yes.
sent you the list of trademarks that's owned by Facebook. It's actually in their own website. I've already sent it to you. Horizon is in it too. I didn't see Zuckerverse.
Does anybody think
Maybe
if
it's
they
in
use
process.
Horizon? Does anyone think if they use Horizon that it's going to get confusing when you hear the word Verizon too?
We talked about that yesterday, yeah?
Yes, yeah, we talked, yeah.
It's okay.
Meta, I like the name Meta, though. That's kind of cool. And so she found, Jane found on the data that the updated registered URL, who is on Meta, updated. Yeah. Anyway, we'll find out. I love the name Meta for a company. That would be great. Anyway, we'll know soon, probably Monday. And that's when they have their big event coming up, the what's called the Facebook Connect event, which is their big AR VR event. That'd be interesting to see what kind of updates they have in store. The next one is from the Washington Post. U.S. Commerce Department announces rules banning the export or resale of hacking tools to China, Russia, and other countries of concern. And the photo for this story is the front entrance to NSO Group, the makers of Pegasus, which interestingly looks quite a bit dilapidated. The Commerce Department on Wednesday announced a long-awaited rule that officials hope will help stem the export or resale of hacking tools to China and Russia, while still enabling cybersecurity collaboration across borders. The rule, which will take effect in 90 days, would cover software such as Pegasus, a potent spyware product sold by Israeli firm NSO Group to governments that have used it to spy on dissidents and journalists. And this is a really clever use of international kind of bureaucracy, where America has over the decades placed trade restrictions and embargoes on different countries, most notably Cuba, which has made it very difficult for people to do trade with Cuba, and more recently Iran and Russia. And this is a really interesting case of a very specific type of, well, also, by the way, Americans are not allowed to sell a whole lot of technology to China, including anything to do with 5G, which is why China's Huawei phones don't have 5G antennas to even work with their own 5G towers. Their own phones can't use their own towers because the chips needed for the 5G come from America, which tells you all you need to know about did Huawei really have the intellectual capability to develop 5G, or did they steal it from Ericsson, where they put their corporate headquarters next door to Ericsson? Well, if they had the intellectual capability to develop the towers, wouldn't they have the ability to do, well, not necessarily. The chips is kind of a separate thing on the receiver end of those antennas. But food for thought. So, but I like this concept of like, oh, all of this spyware stuff is actually in some sense commercial, especially in the case of this Israeli company NSO Group. And hey, NSO Group, hey, Israel, all of your cybersecurity that you're selling to China and Russia, you can't do that anymore unless you want to become a rogue state, which I don't think they want to do. So that's a very clever piece of political movery. Really interesting move. NSO has said it does not sell products to China and Russia, and it requires its customers to use the software only for law enforcement and counterterrorism purposes. Great, then you've got nothing to worry about. And that, as the article says, the rule, which will take effect in 90 days, would cover Pegasus, a potent spyware product sold by the NSO Group. It would bar sales of hacking software and equipment to China and Russia, as well as to a number of other countries of concern, I imagine like Iran and North Korea and such, without a license from the department's Bureau of Industry of Security. What it is not intended to do, senior Commerce Department officials said, is prevent American researchers from working with colleagues overseas to uncover software flaws or cybersecurity firms from responding to incidences. The rule has been in the works for years, stalled earlier by fears it would stymie defensive work in cyber field. Now officials hope they have reached the right balance. Here's the quote. The rationale is these are items that can be misused to abuse human rights, to track and identify dissidents, or disrupt network or communications, but they also have very legitimate cybersecurity uses, said one senior official who spoke on the condition of anonymity under ground rules set by the agency. So what the rule does is restrict these exports to the problematic countries. Commerce already has export controls on products containing encryption, so the new rule applies to products that do not contain encryption. There are probably few U.S. companies whose products would be covered by the rule, but anyone who sells U.S. origin software or technology to develop cyber intrusion products outside the U.S. must also seek authorization. The rule is complicated. For instance, an American company wanting to ship intrusion software to the governments of Israel, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia would require a license. If the software is to be used for cyber defense purposes, such as penetration testing, and will be sold to non-government persons, the license is not required. Any intrusion software, even for defense purposes, being sold to anyone in China or Russia, whether or not they work for the government, will require a license according to the rule. Here's the quote. That's one of the primary purposes of the license application, says Kevin Wolf, a former Assistant Secretary of the Export Administration at the Commerce Department. Do we trust that the company overseas is going to use it for the reason stated? If there are doubts, then we will deny the application.
Tyler, can they resell it? Can a country which can get their license from America, can they become effectively an intermediary and sell it on to China?
I don't know. The rule will align with U.S. and with 42 European other allies that are members of what's called the Wassenaar Arrangement, which set voluntary export control policies on military and dual-use technologies or products that can be both used for civilian and military purposes. China is not a Wassenaar member, but Russia is. Israel is also not a member, but voluntarily adopts its controls. Although that apparently did not prevent Pegasus from being sold to and used by Saudi Arabia to track journalists and dissidents, as countries can vary in how they implement Wassenaar controls. NSO has said it doesn't sell to China and Russia. Most other Wassenaar countries have already imposed regulations on hacking tools. The U.S. would be the last or near last to do so. The delay grew out of the issue's complexity and the agency's desire not to impede legitimate cybersecurity work. We're trying to walk the line between not impairing legitimate cybersecurity collaboration across borders, but trying to make sure these pieces of hardware and software technology aren't obtained and used by repressive governments. Makes sense. Okay, next up, Twitter acquires London-based Sphere, which develops a group chat app and had previously raised $30 million, which means it's still quite a young startup. And they had a very cool product. It will be, and the team, they are winding down the app. The standalone app known as Sphere is going to die. And that team of about 20 people will be working on Twitter in their social team. And the question is, will they be bringing some of those features into Twitter? Twitter has announced quite a lot of upcoming features on their roadmap, like communities, which is kind of like Facebook groups. So it'll be interesting to see how much of Sphere's features will now appear in Twitter and in what capacity. Can somebody comment on that while I take a 2-minute break? I'll be right back. Wait, let me invite up LS and Jennifer.
And Michelle is into.
Okay, I invited Michelle. Anyone have a comment on Twitter's upcoming feature roadmap?
I have more of a question on how many users do you think are on the same user across the same platforms? You know, when we talk about the number of users in Facebook, how many of those are the ones using Twitter or using Clubhouse or Instagram or what have you?
Because Facebook is about 2.8 billion. Twitter is about 300 million.
Yeah, but of the 300 million Twitter accounts,
yep. How many use Facebook?
How many use Facebook?
A huge percent.
It seems like it's the same, right?
Yeah.
It just seems like it's the same users in each platform. Yeah.
For sure. Let me find a contentious one.
Well, while you're resting, Tyler,
okay.
I'll just speak since you're
inviting
me up to give you a break. Yeah, to give you a break. So regarding, and maybe Cheryl or MA or any of you guys can refresh me because I just popped in the room. Was this, what Tyler was reading the article, was it related to AI or only software, hardware with China and this dual use? Because I'm familiar with the macro. I know what's going on macroly about segmenting what has to happen, in countries and what can be used as dual use technology. But it's kind of getting scary from the bottom up. And I think Meseret was commenting, like, how can it be resold? Because I think we're almost at a Cold War, and it is what it is. And I think it's going to just spill over to this is just my thoughts, to AI and other software. But I think Meseret was trying to say, can a company, if they have legal rights for licensing, what can they do? What can they not do? What's the territory? So can someone just update me on that article?
Were we talking about like where Huawei is having, a digital presence everywhere,
No, no,
basically?
Meseret. I'm sorry. When I popped in the room, sorry, when I first got in the room before I came on stage, Tyler was reading.
Did you just pop
His,
in, Alice?
yes, I just got in. I just got
Okay,
in.
they're
Sorry.
just talking about Twitter buying a small
No,
setup
not
loss
Twitter.
here.
The story before that one. The one before that one, which was had to do
The one
with.
about cybersecurity,
Yes,
right?
yes, because
That
I'm
one.
getting into AI and cybersecurity. That's why. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking about. So, sorry,
The
because I'm
question that
multitasking.
so basically the topic was about selling 5G and how certain countries are not allowed to buy it, but what happens if a country that buys it goes and turns around and sells it to another country that's not allowed to buy it from the U.S. That was the
Was it
question.
only 5G or was it cybersecurity embedded with 5G with AI?
I think it was more than just 5G. It was cybersecurity, software in general. But
Yes,
correct me
it's
if I'm
something
wrong.
we're building. My company is building. That's
Yeah,
what I was concerned with.
I think he was saying that about like Pegasus, for example,
Yeah.
has been selling for security, and they were talking about national security and that type of stuff for governments. But the U.S. is saying that they cannot sell it to, let's say, to China and Russia. That's where they are trying to do through the enforcement of trade and other things. So that was, I think, my understanding.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I asked if they won't be able to just resell it, like if somebody buys the license from one of those countries which is allowed to buy it, then will they be able to kind of forward that technology on to Russia and China? And yeah.
To
Greg, you
me,
want to
is
say
And
that
I'm
something?
I'm sorry, guys. I just want to comment. I'm not so focused on the macro of the bigger companies. It's the smaller and Meseret knows the disenfranchised companies that don't have the tech. And I don't care about Huawei and on everything on that level, but if there's breakthrough technology that's being done on 5G and AI and maybe cybersecurity and quantum machine learning, did the small businesses not get a chance to get that anymore? And that kind of makes me really sad if we're, and it is what it is. I understand governments very well. But if those doors are being closed, then you're talking about an economic system that will continue into 2041 where these countries will just suffer by disenfranchised period because they won't be able to compete. That's what I came into the room on. That's all.
Alas, I believe that the article was saying that it's not going to be limited to small companies. In fact, Tyler read a sentence where he said that these small companies that just deal with like smaller issues will be able to buy it even without a license. It's the companies where the America basically will worry that they might resell the or pass the technology on, or maybe that the reason why they want to buy it is not legitimate. It's not a cybersecurity reason. It's something else.
I see. So you're talking about just major companies or outright buyouts, like if China wanted to buy a tech company that's valued at $6 billion and no revenue, well, why are they really buying it? It may be that case, I guess.
I think it's supposed to stem the export of hacking tools like
Yep. Yep.
Pegasus. And the US is basically saying, we get to hack Russia and China, you
Yeah,
don't.
that's right.
Okay, okay, all right, I got it. All
Big
right.
bully.
Well, they're saying that because when you're killing your political opponents and we don't, you're doing war crimes, you're doing crimes against humanity, and we're not. You're having a genocide on Uyghurs, and we're not. You're using these technologies to commit genocide and killing political opponents and maintain your sham of a democracy when it's in fact a dictatorship. We're not doing that.
Yeah, your civilians don't own gun, but ours, yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. A little side note, can you just imagine our ex-president, Mr. Trump, sitting wherever he sits, doing his tweeting on his iPhone, and some other country having Pegasus on that phone?
Well, there's that, and then there's imagine, and this is concerning, is there's a whole bunch of countries with a whole bunch of these strongman dictator types, from North Korea, Turkey. There's a ton of them. And we can include Belarus in there. And the idea that these technologies like Pegasus enable them, but now that we know Pegasus exists, although that's a very recent revelation, even though it's existed for more than a few years, that it gives them an incredibly unfair tool in silencing their political opponents. So that your political rival who's going to run against you in the next election, every little thing they're doing, and that their son has some shady dealings with China and hookers and cocaine and laptops and all this. You see what I'm saying? You can neutralize your political opponents preemptively.
And
Not only
Tyler,
that,
I'm sorry, and that really scares me. And I'm not talking about the negative that they're doing, but if the other opponent has these personal issues and all people, that's on them. But what if, macroly, the one that he's running against or she's running against is more embedded with corruption or status quo of keeping certain suppressions, then the system will never change.
Well, also, it was quite interesting, just to go put on the tinfoil hat for a second, as we're known to do. Wasn't it interesting how confidently Hillary Clinton on national television during the biggest political televised situation, which is the one-on-one personal debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, she accused him of being a Russian asset directly in the middle of a debate with supreme confidence. It was not even a suggestion. It was like, you are a puppet of Putin in a very direct way, not in an implied you're influenced by Putin. So is it possible, being that she worked directly with the president, Obama, that they were investigating that, and maybe no doubt they have tools like Pegasus on his phone before he even announced he was running for president. And they might have some intelligence, some strong indicators that they couldn't really submit into court, because then they would have to say, well, we have complete ownership of his phone.
Tyler, if you look at
you
the
really,
Comey, the recent Comey, look at the Comey Netflix. It is a docuseries, so I don't know how much credit to give it, but they're surveilling, same as they surveil us, we surveil them. So they were surveilling Russian agents, no Russian agents. So Trump's people were caught not because they were being tracked, but because the Russian people they were talking to were being tracked.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, they did know this ahead of the election. And there's a whole thing around Comey and what was it for him to release the Hillary tapes and not disclose the Trump ties to Russia. So there's a whole political issue around that. And yes, they did know this, and they were absolutely surveilling them. It's not Pegasus. It's like flat out what we all do all the time. It's what the governments do all the time. We surveil our the other superpowers.
Yeah.
So it's not
And
that.
and
that
just so
was
I'm clear, I'm not. I'm sorry, Ms. Red. I'll shut up in a second. I'm not one way or the other, Trump or Biden. We just have to have a balance with this, because we're heading into we're heading into the metaverse faster than we can see, and it scares my ass
Okay, well,
personally.
that is a
Excuse my language,
perfect
ladies.
segue.
It's not the metaverse. No, we're in cyber war already. We're in like
Well,
world cyber. It's
I'm
not
talking about the
metaverse.
tools that are
Metaverse is a
coming.
whole gaming tool, etc., that will like influence people. We are in cyber war. We are, because we don't know where it comes from. We don't know where the attacks come from. We don't know whether a power outage is an actual power outage or coming from another country. So yes, there's a ton of this going on. But like, to keep it within realm, it's super scary.
But
But it's
Jennifer,
not
I
the
just want to say
regular
one point.
metaverse. Yeah.
Oh, Jennifer, I want to say one point. The true metaverse, forget the gaming and what you've been told and what's being built. It is basically, which we're doing now in Clubhouse. It is the digital world, okay, whatever it is, connected to the real world. All right, period. With real transactions, real outcomes. Forget the gaming side. I'm telling you what's being built. And I'm trying to do something for the economy. That's just me and my company, where people can simulate it, and it's a simulation and it goes the other way. But there is tech and there's stuff being built, Just like when we simulate our astronauts going to Mars, the real astronauts like NASA, we simulate it, they go. That's what's being built. Now, the gaming and the surface and consumer things are what's being told on the surface. What's really coming is it will bridge everything. And a lot of that may involve a cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin, but current countries stabilizing their coin, like China, yuan, and so, etc. But the transactions will be mirrored. They will be blurred. And if you talk about that power, I think we all have to be aware as humans what that can lead to. And the cyber protection must always be true for your own country, but for fairness globally as well. That's my piece. That's all.
Here's a nice fit to that. A really interesting tweet somebody did yesterday, a few hours ago, saying, and Jack Dorsey gave a really interesting response to this tweet. So the tweet says, the word metaverse was coined by Neil Stephenson in the book Snow Crash, and it originally described a virtual world owned by corporations where the users were treated as citizens in a dystopian corporate dictatorship. What if Neil was right? Jack Dorsey responds, he was. Which is,
and I didn't even know that existed, Tyler, until you just read it. Seriously, I didn't even know. I'm just wow.
What an amazing slam on Zuckerberg with his whole push into the metaverse. That is a truly awesome shade slap. That's awesome. Yes.
Did you get the news that Donald Trump launched a media company and going to have a social media site and also planning to make it go
I've seen that headline 10 times over the last 10 months.
Oh.
Is there
Is this 3 hours ago?
Right. So there's a new monthly update that Trump is again launching a social media company.
Yeah, and now going to bring it on
it's
on
called
public
Truth.
Respect.
That's what he's calling it.
Yeah,
It's called Truth.
Let's see.
It's called, it is. It literally is called Truth. Oh shit! You weren't even joking. Oh my god.
Get the clips out, homies. Get the clip out.
Trump announced.
Yeah.
Well, guys, he's campaigning, so he needs more money.
Yeah, he needs money.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump launches Truth social media platform. Oh my god! You can't make this up.
Oh, did he trademark Truth?
Oh my god!
They can trademark Truth.
I wasn't joking.
I can't. I thought you were making a hilarious joke because that's very funny if Trump's calling his platform Truth. The reality is that he is. Holy shit.
Okay, I'll check the trademark.
To the previous point, I mean, Truth is English for Pravda, right?
That's a great. Oh boy! So it was Putin's idea. Why don't you just? How do you say Pravda in English? You say Truth. Call it Truth, my friend, comrade Trump. Call it Truth. Former U.S.
He liked it because it's almost Trump. It's Trump with a couple letters.
The last two letters. Former U.S. President.
He did try it out. If you remember, Tyler, he did roll it out, and then it just kind of fizzled out, and they complained about it.
No.
I think they're just testing the market many times and just didn't take hold.
Truth Social will be created through a new company formed by a merger of Trump Media and Technology Group and a special acquisition company, a SPAC, according to a press release. We live in a world where the Taliban has a huge presence on Twitter, yet your favorite American president has been silenced. This is unacceptable, Trump said in a written statement included in the release. I'm excited to send out my first Truth on Truth Social very soon. TMTG, which is the Trump Media Technology Group, was founded with a mission to give a voice to all. I'm excited to soon begin sharing my thoughts on Truth Social and to fight back against big tech, he said. The social network, set for a beta launch next month and will roll out in the first quarter 2022, is the first of 3 stages in the company's plans, followed by a subscription video-on-demand service, meaning Netflix, called TMTG Plus, which will feature entertainment, news, and podcasts according to the news release. In a slide deck on its website, the company envisions eventually competing against Amazon's AWS cloud service and Google Cloud. Well, that I was going to get to that, which is who the hell's going to host this, because Amazon and Google and Microsoft will not. And that Parler, the social media app, is being hosted by a Russian cloud company, if I understand correctly, because the traditional American cloud companies won't host it. And so they're going to need to make their own cloud infrastructure to host their own social media site. A Trump representative who declined to be named confirmed the contents of the TMTG news release to Reuters. Trump spokesperson Liz Harrington also tweeted a copy. For so long, big tech has suppressed conservative voices. The former president's son, Donald Trump, told Fox News in an interview tonight, my father signed a definitive merger agreement to form what will eventually be the Trump Media and Technology Group and Truth Social, a platform for everyone to express their feelings. Oh, really, everyone? Including the pedophiles. Really? Do you understand where that goes? Do you understand where that leads?
Well, Tyler, this is interesting. I think, and sorry to interrupt, I think this might be correlated to your first story, the original one that I popped in for my own little narrow AI world, about the security of other countries, because Trump, if he runs and it's not hosted in the US, what can influence him, like Russia? And if the servers aren't here, maybe this policy or whatever, the story you were reading is dealing more with him than the small businesses or the technology.
Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms banned Trump from their services. But that protest came after speech. The deal will let Trump, the Trump Media and Technology Group, on Nasdaq through a merger with Digital World Acquisition Group, which is the SPAC. So this is gonna be publicly tradable on Nasdaq. That's gonna be fun to watch as well. TMTG will receive $293 million in cash that Digital World Acquisition Group had in a trust, assuming no shareholder of the acquisition firm chooses to redeem their shares. Who's Orlando?
Tyler, in addition,
Go
in
ahead,
addition
Jay.
to cloud resources, there's also communication, caching, a whole lot of other stuff before a cloud can reach you.
Yeah.
All those other technology
CDNs,
firms
yeah.
in the middle
Yep.
also need to host them.
That's really interesting. What Shahin's talking about is the media that you consume, meaning video, because he's talking about streaming video, like a Netflix type thing, a subscription video on demand. That's Netflix. The way Netflix works is there are what are called CDNs, content delivery networks, because you don't want to call a large video file from one location. So if Netflix is based in San Francisco, although are they in Atlanta or something like that? Anyway.
No, they're in Los Gatos.
Yeah, okay. So they're in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and somebody in Amsterdam wants the net to watch Squid Game on Netflix. Netflix cleverly said, rather than have everyone get all the traffic all the way from San Francisco, why don't we put it in cute little pockets all over the planet? Like we can partner with these CDNs, content delivery networks, and there's dozens of them who specialize in this, and they're basically repositories for this content, and they've got a network of them all over the planet. So you partner with any CDN. That CDN has hundreds of locations around the globe where they can hold your files for people to access them much more quickly, much more locally, so that somebody in Amsterdam is getting the files from a repository in Amsterdam. That makes all the sense in the world. That's how the internet works. And so Shahin's point is they will have to partner with a CDN. And the question is, can CDNs be held responsible for some of the content that they have?
And they need lines from telcos. Will
That
the
too.
telcos deal with
The
them?
pipes, the actual pipes between the CDNs and the origin of the content. It's you're right. So it might have to go so far that they have to lay their own pipes, actual cables, and build their own freaking internet.
Trump net.
That's not going to happen because
oh my god! Or his own satellite network. That would be amazing.
Trump cloud.
Truth cloud.
But look at Google and Amazon and those guys have been at it for a long time, and they're not quite there yet. They still need AT&T and Verizon and others, and then you have to go international, and you need Vodafone and BT and NTT and whatnot.
And Shahan, you bring up an excellent point, and thank you for clarifying sometimes my thoughts, because this then touches into international countries and who's pulling, what data in, what data out. Is that political interference, thought process, cybersecurity? Because cyber is going to take on a whole new meaning, in my opinion, in the next year or two. That's not only saying shutting down systems and ransomware for Bitcoin, it's going to take on influence. And so that's where we're heading.
Okay, next article, kind of interesting one. Politico says they have sources that Pierre Omidyar, who, by the way, was a co-founder of eBay and became incredibly wealthy, moved to Hawaii and does a whole lot of philanthropic work. And so this headline says that they have sources that Pierre Omidyar's philanthropic organization, which is called Illuminate, handles Frances Haugen's PR in Europe. Omidyar donated $150,000 to whistleblower aid in 2020. Support from eBay founder turned tech critic Pierre Omidyar is helping Frances Haugen take on the world's most powerful companies. Omidyar Network itself made a blog post saying in support of tech whistleblowers who are holding tech to account. The Verge wrote a post saying eBay billionaire Pierre Omidyar is backing the Facebook whistleblower. And let's see if he tweeted about it. No, he didn't. He does tweet, but not about that. So the next one's from Protocol. It says, since May, Google says it has blocked 1.6 million messages and restored 4,000 YouTube influencer accounts affected by a phishing campaign offering fake collaborations. A network of Russian-speaking hackers are phishing YouTube influencers with fake collaboration officers in order to hijack their accounts. Oh, this is clever. Google's threat analytics group released a blog post on Wednesday detailing their efforts to take down a phishing campaign targeting at YouTubers. A network of Russian-speaking hackers are phishing YouTube influencers with fake collaboration offers in order to hijack their accounts, Google said in a blog post on Wednesday. Since May of this year, Google's threat analysis group has blocked 1.6 million phishing messages coming from Russia to YouTube influencers. 1.6 million messages that they create. That's not that surprising, honestly. So here's the campaign. Comrades, here's what we need to do. In our continued effort to sabotage America internally, using crazy narratives, causing a lot of division, a whole lot of political extremism, what we need to do, comrades, is take over some of these YouTube accounts so that we can upload content that will cause more division, as we've been doing for the past decade on Twitter and Facebook. So a lot of that crazy crap you've been seeing on Facebook and Twitter, a whole lot of that vitriol, a whole lot of those commenters intentionally causing fighting, intentionally causing division among brothers, as the Bible says, which, by the way, that's against the law, against the Abrahamic laws to do that. That Russia's intentionally doing that. That's their playbook. Divide and conquer. So in their never-ending campaign of divide and conquer, using social media against America, their latest plan was to create a bot army, a whole lot of invites. Let's do an analysis of all the top influencers on YouTube. Can you do that, Comrade Boris? Yes, Big Daddy Vladdy. I have the list of the top influencers in YouTube. Okay, great. How many do you have? Well, we have about 1 million, the top 1 million influencers. Okay, great. Let's send them emails inviting them to collaborate. And let's imply there's some money involved. These are kids who are trying to make a quick buck. So they sent out 1.6 million messages to these influencers. And Google says they've restored 4,000 accounts that were targeted by these techniques. So they targeted 4,000 accounts. YouTube shut those accounts down just to protect them from being hijacked by Russia. Google identified the perpetrators of the campaign as a group of hackers tied to the online forum. They developed false collaboration opportunities with YouTubers, ranging from free antivirus software to online games in order to steal their accounts. Once the victims took the bait, the hackers would take over their channels and sell it or use it to perpetrate crypto scams. The hackers have done everything from forging business emails and building fake websites to delivering malicious files via social engineering. The company said it has decreased the volume of related phishing emails on Google or Gmail by 99.6% since May 2022 and has referred this. Oh, so they're also able to stop them from receiving the emails as well, and has referred the scheme to the FBI for further investigation. Lovely. Okay, next. Bloomberg says internal email. Apple will test unvaccinated corporate staff each time they enter offices starting November 1 and ask U.S. staff to report vaccine status by October 24th. The company's still stopping short of requiring the shots. Unvaccinated the retail staff will be asked to test twice a week. Okay. All right. So it's another Apple insider leaked an internal email to Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, which Apple said, those people don't belong here if you're leaking this stuff like that. The next one from Telegraph, Yahoo Finance mobile app, which posts news from other outlets along with market data, has disappeared from the App Store in China. The Telegraph can exclusively reveal the move as authorities seek to clamp down on those circumventing existing censorship rules. Well, here's the problem. I already know what this article is going to say because we're educated on this topic, which is China has banned foreign media or any media in China giving any news that is they don't want their citizens to read. It's taking the whole idea of fake news to a whole new China level. In America, our president said that's fake news. In China, they say that news doesn't exist. That news is illegal. If you're saying news we don't like, we remove you from our Great Firewall of China. We don't allow it into the country. So even if there is negative news worth reporting inside China, it doesn't enter the vacuum of the fantasy land known as China, because they don't want their citizens to be informed and be aware of the economic collapse that awaits them. Chinese internet users have lost one of the last avenues to foreign news after the Yahoo Finance app disappeared from the Apple's store because China controls Apple. China calls up Apple and says, you remember we told you to remove the Taiwan flag? Right. Fantastic. Thank you. And remember we told you to remove any mentions of Tiananmen Square, this list of 1,000 words. That was a headline that we read a month ago of all the huge list of words that is not allowed to exist in China inside of the Apple ecosystem. Well, we have a new request. That app, the Yahoo Finance app, remove that from your app store. Thank you very much. Cheers. Contact you next week about other updates of things that we don't want you to have in, because the Yahoo Finance app is sharing news from around the world about news that's happening in China, about companies collapsing, about all, news, the world information. China doesn't like that. That's not welcome here. We don't have that. We have our own little crazy bubble. We're like North Korea now, where you don't get to know what's happening. That we as the country, the CCP, are causing now systemic problems that might cause to the demise of the country, which might scare you and might cause you to start hoarding at the supermarkets, might cause you to, short the stock market, get your money out of China. No, we can't have that. So we need to kill the messenger who might be alerting you to the facts and the news. So they've killed the messenger. So there will be no more news about potential concerning uh, things happening. Everything's gravy. Everything's beautiful. Life is lovely. Keep consuming. Keep having babies. Keep consuming. Keep working. No laying down. Are you laying down? Don't lay down. You need to stand up. Go back to work. Everything's fine. Uncle G's in control.
If they don't lay down, how to have babies?
I think it's
Hey, by the way,
because
does
the
this apply to Hong Kong?
Evergrande.
They just go snorkeling, Cheryl.
Does it
Evergrande.
does it apply
No,
to Hong
because
Kong?
Evergrande again, yeah, doesn't fit their default again.
Chinese internet users. So Yahoo app republishes news from foreign media organizations, including outlets whose websites are blocked in China, such as Bloomberg and Reuters. Bloomberg and Reuters, those really egregious, far left, far right news organizations, Bloomberg and Reuters. That's about as middle of the center of the road of news as you get, is Reuters. There's really no slant in Reuters. They're one of the few remaining, honestly, in the West. This allowed users to skirt official censorship bans, and a feature that likely drew the ire of Chinese authorities. Beijing cracks down on foreign content and influence in China has affected everything from private school curricula to karaoke bar songs. Oh, yes. We read that headline as well about 6 weeks ago, that all the karaoke bars have been warned you cannot have any songs that will threaten national security. And the karaoke bar owner said, oh, shit. That's pretty much every song could be, when you're making up crazy rules like this, any song could be reinterpreted as a threat against national security. Baby Got Back could be about Uncle G for all we know.
I don't want to be vaporized, so I won't go down that tirade I had the other day, but same sentiment, Tyler, about how they're being very fragile.
Chinese.
Oh yeah, sorry, Taylor. And lately, on the YouTube trends, so the top 20, only one Chinese song, and that song title is "The Heart Made of Glass," and that is another way to say those 50 cents in China. So, and it's a mocking song of China. So it's a trend among the top 20 of YouTube. So that's it. Sorry.
It says China.
So meaning, sorry, Tyler, meaning to say that the records company, the label company, is it going to be doomed next?
It says
because all their content will be censored.
Chinese government censors have always tightly controlled news and information, blocking access to foreign media websites and social media networks such as BBC, New York Times, Facebook, Google, Twitter. Recently, Apple has been removing many apps at the demand of Chinese authorities, says Benjamin Ishmael, project director at Apple Censorship. So even Apple's person at Apple Censorship is saying, recently Apple has been removing many apps at the demand of Chinese authorities, an organization that tracks which apps are available and where. But complying with government's orders is different than complying with law, especially in China, where the authorities often resort to extra legal means to muzzle the press, bloggers, activists, and any dissident voices. It was not clear whether Yahoo or Apple had removed the app. Yahoo did not respond to requests for comment, while Apple did not comment. A pattern of randomized censorship days before the removal of the Yahoo app was detected last week. It carried a story by Bloomberg about China's crackdown on the tech industry. There you go. The piece detailed how Apple had thus far managed to stay on Beijing's good side, including by taking down mobile apps at the request of the authorities. After the last few weeks, at least 9 other apps that offer users religious materials, text, prayers, interpretations, and podcasts have also been taken down from Apple's mainland China app store. Yes, as this next paragraph says, apps affected include the Quran, Majid, the Olive Tree Bible, the Holy Bible King James, and the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom, all of those apps not only were removed, they're now labeled as illegal. It's illegal to have an app, and the entire app is the Bible or the Quran or the Jehovah's Witness Bible. Those apps are illegal, hence you must remove them because they violate our laws. Because those books are illegal.
It just is worrisome, isn't it? Like, I mean, oh my goodness. Ethiopia went through 17 years of a socialism regime in the 90s. I don't even know my father. I mean, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me, but my father was one of those, people that disappeared. Yeah, it's just is like censorship, religion, and people disappearing and things. It's so scary to have that system coming back. I'm just praying that it just doesn't come here as well. It's people I remember, like I don't remember anything, but my parents times was going through those socialism system where we have like no religion was allowed, no Christians were allowed to go to the church, or Muslims that they were hiding from the house, and even some topics when they discuss, they have to be careful, otherwise they can disappear. Nobody knows where they went, and that's not where we want to go in 2021. It's scary.
I'm sorry, Meseret, keep hope alive, okay? I never knew my real father, and I grew up in the States, so, you know. But you're right. I think China, they'll figure it out, and I think we'll be better as long as we can talk and we understand what's going on. And to check them when we can check all countries, all governments, and if we're building it, just be aware of what we're building. But I agree with you because I think China's getting ready, in my opinion, for a asymmetrical war that they're going to do, not a traditional one, and that'll happen within 2 years. But you know, the people will figure out a way to get around it, and Chinese people are very creative as well. So being there, I just want to say, just like Ethiopians, right? They're going to figure out a way, no matter what people do or say. Hopefully it'll still continue.
Okay, next up from the information, internal memo from Facebook. Holy shit, are these? It's basically any internal memo at any big tech company is just getting to the press directly these days. This is an internal memo. Facebook has quietly killed the "Hey Facebook" wake word for portal as customers were confused by the phrase and it was affecting usage. Facebook has quietly abandoned the phrase "Hey Facebook" as a way for customers of its portal video chat device to start the device. Okay. Next up, from TechCrunch, Hex, which simplifies storing and sharing large data sets with integrations for Snowflake and others, raises $16 million. Spotify partners with Shopify to let artists list merch on their profiles for $29 a month to $299 a month, starting in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Spotify on Wednesday announced a new partnership with e-commerce provider Shopify that lets artists list merchandise directly on their profiles. What's the $29?
Shopify is on fire. Shopify is on fire. They're like integrating with everyone.
Yep.
If you didn't get Shopify when Tyler told you to, I'm sorry.
Or Spotify, when I said that this was coming, that now artists and Spotify are going to have whole new massive revenue streams. They previously used to make money from ads. Now they're going to make money selling lots of shit by massive influencers like Taylor Swift and Kanye and everybody else. They have 1 million artists all using their Spotify platforms where their fans already are to sell their merch and their concert tickets and their NFTs and their virtual concerts in their own social audio rooms, which is why they bought that app, etc., etc., etc. That's a whole lot of new revenue streams for Spotify. Spotify on Wednesday announced the partnership. Any artist globally can already link to their Shopify store if they have one from their Spotify profile. But now Spotify users will see featured product listings from Shopify on the service Spotify. During the internal beta period, Shopify merchandise will only be visible to Spotify listeners in 5 countries. To set up their virtual merch tables, aka stores, Spotify artists must have a Shopify account. Shopify pricing plans range from $29 for a basic e-commerce package up to $299 for an advanced tier that includes enhanced reporting. Shopify is offering a 90-day free trial to all Spotify artists signing up for the first time. For many fans, Spotify is the primary way they interact with an artist's music, and we are excited to give artists a new way to capitalize on that moment, says Camille Hurst, head of Spotify for Artists. The integration of Shopify's powerful backend for powering commerce presents a significant step forward in our efforts to help artists maximize additional revenue streams and give them agency over their careers. Oh, that last line is hot. Oh, shit. Record labels, did you hear that? Oh, snap. Agency over their careers, implying they don't have agency over their careers because them record labels are fucking vampires who suck every bit of blood out of their artists. I'm speaking as a former major record label artist. And so by even using that as the ending sentence of your statement, giving them agency over their careers, you're implying that they don't have that. And you're right, they don't. And boy, is that
Shots fired.
that is shots fired at the record label, because what this implies, if you take this same thought just one step further, you get to where I said we were going to get to. I even wrote a tweet thread about it back in December, which Jack Dorsey himself liked, where I said the reason that Square, Jack Dorsey, purchased Tidal, which is a Spotify competitor. Why did a fintech app buy a streaming music platform, Tidal? Because, interestingly, and I'm the only one who noticed this, they acquired it the day after, 24 hours after Square got its paper official, got approved to be a bank, an actual bank. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means they can give loans. And 24 hours after they get their banking licenses, which means they can now give loans, they acquire a streaming platform, a music streaming platform like Spotify called Tidal. And so now that they're a bank, I did a tweet thread that said they could give loans to artists on that streaming platform based on data of how many listens they're getting and how many fans they have and blah, blah, blah. And why is that interesting? Because the record labels today, the entire music industry today, the labels function as banks. They give the artists loans called advances so they can go on tour and make an album. And in exchange for that advance of their future record sales, they take all of your rights. And that's why you have no agency over your own career, because you don't own any of the rights of your content. It would be as if YouTube says, oh, you want to upload a video? That's great. We own the video. And
Tyler,
yes,
I can so imagine TikTok going down that road and basically winning with everyone, because they launch artists, and basically that's how bands become, or singers
it's a great
become
point.
popular these days.
Who said that? That's a great point.
Magda,
this is a great point. TikTok does have a huge opportunity here. So does YouTube, so does Spotify. The question is, where are the future artists going? Right? Are they going to Spotify to upload their content on Spotify? Are they going to TikTok? Are they going to YouTube? And the reality is it's a mix, right? Today.
But Tyler, one thing to remember with Tidal is that Jack was talking to Jay-Z, because Tidal was Jay-Z's company.
Right. Jay-Z
So
bought
he
it.
was talking to
Yes.
him.
Jay-Z bought it from
Well,
the
yeah,
original
but yeah,
Norwegian owners. Yeah.
correct. And then put a lot of artists in it. To your point,
Yep.
you're
Well,
exactly
Jay-Z
right.
wanted to do what
I know.
what he wasn't. He needed a fintech
I know.
like Jack and a bank to do what he really wanted to do. And Jay-Z's still involved post acquisition, and it's a beautiful it's more of a partnership than an acquisition, but legally it's an acquisition. But Jay-Z's still on board and it's enabling what he really wanted to see happen, which is enable artists to own their own careers and content and licenses on a platform that works in a more artist friendly way to break up the music industry. And so that's why this Spotify spokesperson's comments about this whole deal being a significant step in our efforts to help artists maximize revenue stream and give them agency over their careers. Let unpack that word. That phrasing is so powerful. This represents a significant step in our efforts, Spotify's efforts, a significant step in Spotify's efforts to help artists and give them agency over their careers. You basically just said it out loud. Spotify wants to help artists get away from the labels.
Like a battering husband.
Ouch. Ouch.
No, I'm serious. They use agency to describe relationships where the spouse doesn't
No,
have any control over their
I know
life,
your
right?
point. Anyway, but this is an important first step in that, because now Spotify is going to be able to see this data. So are the artists. Oh, you're getting away from the record label who's trying to get your merch sales and your ticket sales, and now we've given you a platform to do it independently. And let's see how you're doing. Oh, you're doing great. And let's look at all this juicy data. Okay, great. Looks like you're selling a lot of shirts in, Biloxi, Mississippi. Maybe you should go play a show there. Oh, you need a loan to go do that show to get there? Fine. How much you need? $5,000 here. How about we give you the $5,000? We know you're going to make it. We start promoting your music in advance of your show in Biloxi, Mississippi. Get your fans all hyped about it. Help them buy the merch before the show. And we make sure you get that loan paid back, because we're going to be promoting the shit out of it to all those fans in Biloxi. This is genius.
And then it goes even crazy, Tyler, when you talk about like the metaverse, which I was saying earlier, where they do these concerts and these artists are like, okay, I want to sell merchandise or merch at a concert. So they need to, we say merch. They need to be able to fund that, because, you got Amazon doesn't do anything. Those T-shirts have to be in a warehouse and whatever it is. So you're talking about funding from the shows. Drilled down, I'm talking virtual concerts. I'm not even talking, I'm literally talking virtual concerts where people will order and say, I want that hat, I want that shirt, I want it now, And so those artists will get that revenue, but they have to be able to fund that first.
Okay. Next up is
Tyler,
yes,
Tyler.
yes,
Sorry
yep.
to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Our missing piece, David John, is here. Would you invite him up? We can ask him something. Yeah.
What did you
In
say?
China. David Chang is here. Our Mr.
David
Chang.
Chang.
There we
Oh, I see
go.
him down there. David
Zhang
Chang.
Shenzhen is
Oh,
here.
David Chung is here.
David,
David Chang.
David, where are you at?
Because in
Get your
China,
hand up.
in
we
Chinese,
miss
Where's
you.
David?
yeah, because
Where you?
Where's David?
yeah,
Are you back from
Oh, there he is.
party?
yeah,
There he is.
Yeah,
yeah.
hopefully you're in a secret
Get ready
location,
for some
David.
get ready for some facts,
Are
Because
okay?
you
in
in your
Chinese,
bunker?
we
Hey,
pronounce his
David,
first
we've
name in
missed
Zhang
Welcome
Shenzhen.
you.
back,
All
David.
right
You
now.
better be in a bunker, David. You better be in a bunker.
Pew, pew, pew.
I'll give him the air horn. Welcome back, David. Hi. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm all right. We just listed our company in the US, so I'm quite
Did
happy.
you buy your bunker? Did you buy your bunker?
Did you buy a
He's
bunker?
in the bunker.
Well,
Because he's
we
in Texas.
we mentioned your name yesterday because there was an article that was really confusing, and we said, you know what, we got to wait until David pops back in to really understand what's going on. Can anyone remind me what that article was?
I don't know. I just remember Jack Ma is in Spain.
Yeah, it wasn't that. It was some other interesting move that's happening in China, and it was like, why are they doing that? That's really kind of.
They allow VPN. They
Oh
actually
yes,
allow
that's it.
Oh, VPN.
yes,
Yeah,
VPN
VPN.
company.
Yes, David,
Yes.
did you see this news that China is now allowing foreigners to invest in VPNs in China up, but only 49%. That 51% still needs to be Chinese controlled. But this seemed peculiar. Here it is. China's VPN market now open to foreign investment is the headline. It says the central government of China in Beijing has announced a decision to allow foreign entities to invest in the ownership of virtual private networks in China. Under this new policy, foreign investors can only own up to 50% of China-based VPN companies. This allows China to retain state control over local and approved products while still offering a significant incentive for investment. Apart from VPNs, the policy update also includes changes in the investment caps on information services for app stores, internet connection services, and more. This comes of somewhat of a surprise for a country that has been fighting foreign VPNs for years, hindering their presence in China and imposing fines and other penalties to users who ignored the banning orders. The case against VPNs was that they enabled users to override so-called Great Firewall, blah, blah, blah.
It seems very aligned to me. They're just going to use this as a massive honeypot.
That's the best guess we could come up with, but I imagine, as always, the truth is always a bit more interesting and complex.
I mean, I haven't followed with this particular news in specifically,
Yeah,
but over the past 2 weeks, there have been so many sort of deregulation in terms of foreign ownership, right? I think Cal messaged everyone that article on how Goldman is finally able to
that's
fully
right.
own it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um,
Share that one. That one's quite interesting as well.
well, funnily enough, all of these foreign investment banks, they actually get very limited deal flow within
Right.
China because all of that is still controlled by state-owned investment banks like CICC, China Construction Bank's investment banking arm, etc.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
and CITIC. But where the foreign banks really, I guess, where the Chinese really need to rely on the foreign banks is for them to act as sponsors when Chinese companies go public in Hong Kong. And obviously with Evergrande and everything that's happening in China, things are not looking very positive. So they still need these foreign investment banks to give non-Chinese foreign investors confidence in bringing capital into Hong Kong. So I think that's part of the reason why they're finally deregulating the space. And then there's probably going to be a very bifurcated approach. I mean, I just dealt with my own company's listing for the past couple of months, right? So I can actually speak sort of intimately on our own experience. Um, the the local Chinese banks have great difficulty bringing in non-Chinese capital, and the whole value of Hong Kong right now is for. So the bifurcated approach in China is if you're going to purely look at domestic institutional investors, then the A shares in Shanghai is the preferred approach. But for those who are looking for foreign capital, etc., and with the limitations of being able to list in the U.S., Hong Kong is obviously the best choice for them. And these foreign investment banks are the only avenue for Chinese companies listing in Hong Kong to bring in Western institutional coverage and investors. Um, it's it's sort of insane how how many Chinese companies and their sort of founders, largest shareholders, are all camped out in New York, LA, San Francisco at the moment, trying to piece together what's left of their business overseas and then restructure it for either US listings or US mergers. So I've been in New York for the past 2 weeks. That's like everything I've been seeing. So I've seen maybe over 20 Chinese listed company CEOs in the past 2 weeks, all trying to restructure their company for either US listings or mergers. But the irony is all of these companies that are getting pressured from the Chinese government at the same time are being treated as sort of foreign hostile agents by the SEC. So anyway, we shall see.
And David, just one question. Sorry, SLS. Have you read Red Roulette yet?
I have not.
Oh, that guy who he said his
Yes,
wife
David.
disappeared or whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
I guess I wonder if that's even being discussed. It was certainly in New York, though, especially I imagine very wealthy Chinese folks must be discussing it in some sense.
That's exactly what I was saying a minute ago. You know, having all those things, they really are like, when you look at it in a holistic way, you know, people disappearing and censoring and worshiping, no matter what your religion is, all those things. It's just a sign of not a good system. I mean, I know that Ethiopia went through 17 years of the socialism regime, and you can hear a lot of people who went through that, the Red Terror, thousands of people assassinated within a matter of weeks and stuff. It just is not, it's not a system that people feel comfortable. All my parents' time, all they talk about is how they lived in fear every single day, thinking that somebody else in the family is going to disappear again, you know, just because they said something or they were involved in something
What
else.
years
So
was that, Missy?
it started in 1974 with the revolution of overthrowing the Haile Selassie, you know, royal system that we used to have, the feudal system, and it lasted until 91. That's where Ethiopia actually lost most of the educated, brain drain. Number one for Ethiopia, that was the biggest population that left, the educated, the university students. I lost my father, like I said earlier. I didn't even know him. My mom said I met him, but I don't remember. He disappeared. He was one of those. We had a family member who got assassinated. I mean, that's why I guess, as soon as I got a bit older, that I immigrated to Canada as well. So, you know, I am one of the very few one in my family who came back to Ethiopia, and they always wonder, what are you doing there? My brothers and sisters and cousins, everybody is out. They are in Canada, U.S. and stuff. I'm the only one who has been back for the last 7
Well,
years.
okay.
And Tyler, just a reference point. It's just like what Iran in '79. It just when everyone from Ethiopia, they had to leave in '74 because Nixon devalued the dollar after that, and it just went crazy. So a lot of this is just an exodus, as always repeated. But to David's point, I think it's sad that the U.S. are treating these companies hostile. They should embrace mergers. I'm open to it because I think the CCP is dealing with an issue of do they lose control, which I know David understands. If they don't right this ship very quickly, she's out very quickly, and the Communist Party's out because China does not stand for that. They just won't stand for it long. So I'm intrigued, David, when you get a chance to read Red Roulette or get some insight on that, to come back, and that would be great.
Okay. All right.
Who's the protagonist in Red Roulette?
The author
This is. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
is
ahead,
the
Tyler.
author, and he's telling the story about his wife who disappeared and then reappeared 4 years later, the day before the book's launch, to tell him don't launch it because it will put somebody's life at risk, and implying that their son who lives with the father, or maybe her life or his life or the child's life. So she says it's not worth, so it's really disturbing kind of.
But David, the main thing is they were close to, and I'm always mispronouncing his name, Winjabo. They were close to his wife.
Yeah. What?
Okay, and Obama was dealing with him even when he went over, at the G8, because he was the premier, and so that's how they rose to power.
Well,
They were
what
that
was
red aristocracy.
what was really interesting is he's super intelligent guy. His wife was he and his wife each are separately billionaires, and she was super close to whoever the number two is under Xi. and,
Yeah, it was Winjabo.
and then
No,
and then
no. Wenjaba was under Hu Jintao.
yeah, and
Correct. That's who it was.
and then when the wife called to say don't release this book, he knows that it's not her saying that. He knows that the government's using her to contact him. So he asked her, because he's been trying to find her for 4 years, and why is she calling him the day before the book launches? And he realized she has no idea, she has never even heard of COVID. She doesn't know COVID exists, he realizes during the call, which means she's been under a rock. She's been not living a normal kind of life.
In a bunker.
Yeah. So
The thing that
But Tyler, when they added, I'm sorry, just to give the book's context, it starts his life all the way up, David, so that you know. So Tyler's talking about the end points of his life, but how they rose to power, how they made their money, how they became in real estate, how they were able to build what they did in Beijing, okay, and the international airport and those hangars there was because her ties to that red aristocracy in China. That's what I'm talking about specifically,
okay.
David.
Yeah, and the thing, I just make one comment too. The thing to expand on it that I got out of it was that, her ultimate downfall was that she wasn't connected by blood to the party. And that's the real story of this book from Desmond Shum is it's bloodlines that are running the country.
So next headlines from TechCrunch about a company called Super Plastic, which owns an animated collab house of synthetic superstars on social media, raises $20 million Series A, bringing its total of funding so far to $38 million. The company from the creator of Elo and Kinderbot is announcing a new $20 million funding round to build out an imagined virtual world populated by virtual influencers. Superplastics investors include Google, Index, Founders Fund, Kraft Ventures. Holy shit, those are like the holy cow, that's an amazing group of investors right there. Kraft is David Sachs, and Founders Fund, which is Peter Thiel, essentially. Index and Google. Wow. And very personal friends of mine, Cyan Bannister and Jared Leto. Wow. Great group of investors on that one. That's wild. Superplastic's proposition is a strange one. The company owns an animated collab house of synthetic superstars, characters who live on social media and pop up everywhere else through partnerships with celebrities, iconic fashion brands, and gaming platforms. The company has already racked up millions of followers across Instagram and TikTok, sold millions in NFTs, and built up a bustling Discord community all around a stable of violent, fashion-forward cartoon characters. Everything is driven by the characters and the story, and in a way, Superplastic's management team. They're aiming high, aspiring to build its own fucked up Disney, they said. Gugamon, one of Superplastic's central characters, intermittently tortures his counterpart and models virtual Gucci gear, just one of Superplastic's many lucrative partnerships. Gugamon also popped up in one of Fortnite's recent sessions, not just as a skin, but also as a full-blown featured character. Superplastic is also deep into the NFT phenomena. Earlier this year, Superplastic partnered with Christie's for an NFT drop. Yada yada. Very interesting. And then there's another quote. I'm more interested in connecting the real world, not just doing stuff that's virtual, according to the founder. Okay, next up, Honeycomb, which develops software observability tool used by companies, including Stripe and Slack, raises $50 million. Honeycomb, a software observability platform used by developers at companies such as Stripe and Slack, Heroku and others, raises $50 million. YouTube's Music's free tier will transition to audio only with background listening next month, with videos reserved for premium subscribers. So now you can have background listening in the YouTube Music app. So you can use other apps and listen to YouTube Music in the background for free. The question is, will there be ads? So YouTube starting to take their YouTube Music standalone app, which is aimed as a competitor to Spotify, really. It's streaming music. It'll be interesting to see now that they're trying to push that in a bigger way. And perhaps they're doing this, because they're hearing rumors somewhere that perhaps Spotify is starting to get into their game of video. And that's what's making them want to go back and push back into audio. And that would be super interesting. So Facebook will start demoting all groups' content from users who have violated policies elsewhere on the site, and will let admins review flagged content. Let's read that. How are they doing that? This is some clever moderation shit. So if a user does something bad on their own profile, and they get flagged on their own profile for doing something, then that could influence how much visibility they are given inside of a group. That's what it seems to imply from the headline. So it says Facebook will start demoting all groups content from people who have violated its policies elsewhere on the platform. The move is supposed to limit rule breakers from reaching other people in a community, and it builds on existing policies that prevent them from posting, commenting, or inviting others. In a blog post, Facebook says it will also add a new flagged by Facebook feature that shows group administrators content that's been flagged for removal.
Doesn't this sound like social credit?
It does. Inside Facebook. That's a great, really smart observation, Shahin. Yes, it does. Because
I mean, they are turning into their own country.
the admins can choose to remove the content or to ask for a review. This is really interesting. So, if a piece of content of fake news, for example, anti-vax news, potentially, is shared on a Facebook post by Aunt Betty, and Facebook reviews it and says, that article from that source is hogwash, that's fake news, and it's been flagged by Facebook. Now, anytime anyone in all of Facebook tries to share that piece of content in a news group, in a community, in a group, separate from their own personal news feed, which no doubt happens millions of times a day, Facebook has already flagged that piece of content, that URL, and now the moderators of that group, which in Facebook terminology is known as the administrators of the group, the admins of the group, the Facebook group, now see one of your group members is trying to share a piece of content that has been flagged by Facebook. And we want you to know that that's a piece of bullshit content. But you're the group admin, up to you. Do you want to allow content that we've already flagged? Very interesting. To reduce the amount of bullshit in Facebook. But it is a bit of a social credit score, because they're also going to diminish, as Shahin said, people who have been known to be rule breakers, as this says. The move is supposed to limit rule breakers from reaching other people when they go into a group, into a community, and start sharing stuff. And then Facebook knows that person's an idiot. And if they're in the group, they're going to do stupid shit in that group. And so they're going to limit the visibility of that idiot's bullshit. Let's hope that Facebook is using good, is sensical about who and how they're limiting folks. Because no doubt they will not be able to please everybody in how they decide to do that. Which means they'll probably be doing it opaquely, not transparently. Which means it's going to inspire a whole bunch of conspiracy theories that I'm being shadow banned. And, oh, you're being shadow banned too. Oh, are you a Republican? Oh, I am too. Oh, shit, Facebook's trying to silence Republicans, everybody. Time to riot. So it's going to be very interesting how this plays out. An invisible social credit score. And that's kind of the interesting difference, is in places where there are social credit scores, to some extent, they're aware of it and they know their actual score. It's very transparent. And they have remedies for how to improve it. But if it's a covert social credit score, then that's where people start cooking up all kinds of conspiracy theories. And anywho, the next article is where SkyHive, which develops workforce planning software, raises money. A look at Ask Delphi, a research project by the Allen Institute for AI that offers answers to ethical dilemmas, often with bewildering responses. A fascinating project that's been understood as a cautionary tale. Got a moral quandary you don't know how to solve? Fancy making it worse? Ask Delphi. What a great headline. And then the USA Today has covered this one. It says, we asked an AI to ponder video games' biggest ethical dilemmas. So it's using an AI to do shit it was never designed to do. Like wax philosophically about, difficult questions. The next one, Coinbase, from CoinDesk. Bitcoin crosses $66,000, a new all-time high after ProShares Bitcoin Strategy ETF. Told you, predicted here in Tech News Around the World by some brilliant dude. I forget what his name was. Maybe we could ping him in. That these ETFs was going to put upward pressure on Bitcoin and cause it to retest its all-time high. And I predicted would break through. And it has. So next up is from Benedict Evans, who used to work at Andreessen Horowitz and has a huge email newsletter. And he's a bit of an analyst, and he's done some analysis of the FTC's report on big tech's startup and merger and acquisitions between 2010 and 2019. Half of the deals were less than $10 million. Most had less than 10 people and were US based. Those are what we call acqui-hires. When it's incredibly small teams and they're being acquired for less than $10 million, that means they were buying the companies at about, $1 million per team member, which is the kind of acqui-hire rate. You can, by the way, if you and a bunch of other geeks and, have any amount of talent, you could put yourselves into a company, create a brand, create a screenshot of some products that you want to develop and start shopping yourselves to be acquired at $1 million a person. Apple has a preset acqui-hire rate of $3 million per team member, per developer. So if you got 10 developers together, shop yourself to Apple, you could sell your company to Apple for $30 million. It's a preset amount. They don't even negotiate it. Little inside baseball on how the whole acqui-hire game is played. A common talking point in tech antitrust, big tech companies have made hundreds of acquisitions in recent years and almost none were reviewed, let alone stopped. So last month, the FTC released some actual data for Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft, and Benedict, being a bit of an analytical dude, has done some analysis of the FTC's big report on big tech. And there you go. The next one is IBM does their Q3 revenue report. And here we come in ramping up quickly into the Q3 earnings seasons where we're going to get all these reports again like we did 3 months ago and when we did the Q2 reports. And let's hope that all the tech companies that I am a shareholder in have good Q3 reports. And that's why all of them are interesting to watch, because they all kind of are like a big school of fish. Where characteristically, the quarter is generally good or bad, because it's a huge school of fish of tech. IBM reports revenue of $17.62 billion, which is below the expected estimate of $17.77. Ouch. So its global technology services revenue was down 5% year over year. Stock down 4% after hours. Yes, your stock will go down if you don't meet the market's estimates. And that's bad. That's bad for all of tech. And what happens is all the Wall Street traders say, oh, IBM is, one of the biggest fish in that school of fish, and it's down. Oh, shit, you might have a down day for tech on the market. And they're going to watch all the other tech quarter reports with a little more scrutiny now. So the next one is Bloomberg says it has sources that the recent ransomware attack against Sinclair is linked to a particular country.
Jeopardy, Tyler?
Yeah, well, this is going to be the hardest case of tech news Jeopardy we have ever had. According to Bloomberg sources, which country is behind the recent ransomware attack against Sinclair?
Definitely Norway.
Canada.
Israel.
Denmark.
Somalia.
It's the Finns, they are pure evil.
Oh, jeez.
Iraq.
Another one, Tehran, Iran. I'm sorry.
No one's going with Macedonia, huh? Or Moldova. A weekend cyber attack against Sinclair Broadcasting Group was linked to one of the most infamous Russian cyber gangs called Evil Corp, according to two people familiar with the attack. The Sinclair hackers used malware called Macaw, a variant of ransomware known as a Wasted Locker. Both Macaw and Wasted Locker were created by Evil Corp, according to the two people who requested anonymity to discuss confidential matters. Evil Corp was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department in 2019. Since then, it has been accused by cybersecurity experts of rebranding in an attempt to avoid the sanctions. People in the U.S. are generally prohibited from engaging in transactions with sanctioned entities, including paying a ransom. Sinclair appears to have been hit by Macaw ransomware, a relatively new strain first reported in early October, said senior threat analysis at cybersecurity firm Recorded Future, which is, by the way, is Google's an investor in Recorded Future. There have not been any other Macaw victims publicly reported, and a Sinclair representative didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Sinclair Media owns, operates, and or provides services to 185 television stations in 86 markets. They are your local news station. 185 TV stations in 86 markets, meaning 86 of America's biggest cities have a combined 185 TV stations, so about 2.5 stations per city in the largest 85 cities in America. That means they control America's media on TV. The Macaw ransomware strain was first spotted by cybersecurity analysts the past week. Sinclair said in an earlier statement it began to investigate a potential cyber attack on October 16th. Data was taken from the company's network, and Sinclair is trying to determine what was stolen. The company notified law enforcement and engaged legal counsel, a cybersecurity forensic firm, and other incident response professionals. While the company is focused on actively managing the security event, the event has caused and may continue to cause disruption to parts of the company's business, including certain aspects of its provision of local advertisements by its local broadcast stations on behalf of its customers.
You know, I have to say that the Evil Corp company has I wonder if they trademarked their brand.
You can't. Yeah, they might. Who knows? They could hack you if they decide that you're using their brand inappropriately.
I mean,
they could seek.
No,
I don't imagine they might go to a court. They might have other ways of extracting value from you.
Other ways
Wait,
of
was
seeking
Shahan?
injunctive relief.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. Didn't that come from, what movie was that? Was it Mr.
It's
Oh, hang
Power.
on. Here.
No, it goes from another one from Netflix, Mr.
Mr. Robot.
Yeah, it was Mr. Robot, right? Where it was Evil Corp he was fighting. He was a hacker.
So it says that the attack took down Sinclair's internal network, their email, their phones, and broadcasting systems of local TV stations. As a result, many channels weren't able to broadcast morning shows, news segments, and scheduled NFL games. Oh shit! That was an effective hack.
You don't mess with my NFL, man.
The Biden administration has taken steps to crack down on ransomware attacks, which have surged in recent years against businesses, municipalities, schools, and even hospitals. Some of the most serious attacks in recent months include a ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline, were tied to Russia-linked groups. Okay. Next up is Andreessen Horowitz investment team has grown to 70 people in the past 4 years, up 170%, outpacing its rivals like Sequoia, Excel, and Lightspeed and others. Yep, they're growing fast. Up 56% in the past 12 months. Andreessen Horowitz is booming. The next one, how Facebook, Apple, Google, Amazon, and others increasingly rival states for geopolitical influence and are reshaping the global order as we know it. Kudos to this journalist. There you go. Asking the questions that we geeks, making a comment that we the geeks ourselves have been making for many months. And I've not seen another journalist cover it with quite such... Oh, from Ian Bremmer, no less. Jesus Christ. Kudos, Ian. So for those who don't know, Ian Bremmer is a political analyst thinker in the U.S., one of the most recognizable. And he titles this post, The Technopolar Moment, How Digital Powers Will Reshape the Global Order. After rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, some of the United States' most powerful institutions sprang into action to punish the leaders of the failed insurrection, but they weren't the ones you might expect. Facebook and Twitter suspended the accounts of President Donald Trump for posts praising the rioters. Amazon, Apple, and Google effectively banished Parler, an alternative to Twitter that Trump supporters had used to encourage and coordinate the attack by blocking its access to web hosting services and app stores. Major financial service apps, such as PayPal and Stripe, stopped processing payments for the Trump campaign and for accounts that had funded travel expenses to Washington, D.C. for Trump supporters. The speed of these technology companies' reactions stands in stark contrast to the feeble response from the United States governing institutions. Congress still has not censored Trump for his role in the storming of the Capitol. Its efforts to establish a bipartisan 1911-style commission failed amid Republican opposition. Law enforcement agencies have been able to arrest some individual rioters, but in many cases only by tracking clues they left on social media about their participation in the fiasco. States have been the primary actors in global affairs for the nearly 400 years. That's starting to change as a handful of large technology company rivals them for geopolitical influence. The aftermath of the riot serves as a last proof that Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Twitter are no longer merely large companies. They have taken control of aspects of society, the economy, and the national security that were long the executive preserve of the state. The same goes for Chinese technology companies such as Alibaba, ByteDance, and Tencent. Non-state actors are increasingly shaping geopolitics, with technology companies in the lead. And although Europe wants to play, its companies do not have the size or geopolitical influence to compete with the American and Chinese counterparts. And it's a very long article. And one of the breakout quotes that he does is, people are increasingly living out their lives in digital space, which governments cannot control. Big tech is transforming human relationships. And oh, wow, is this long? Technology companies are increasingly geopolitical actors in and of themselves. And holy shit, is this long? Governments and technology companies are poised to compete for influence. Kind of repetitious theme here. But boy, that's a 20-minute read, this one. That's a very long article. So I will tweet.
Oh, it's a white paper.
I will tweet it out for those who want to check it out. And
it's in Foreign Affairs, right?
Yes. Foreignaffairs.com is the source.
Yeah, and it does read like a white paper that he must have done for some politician that he's now repurposing. It felt like that to me.
Okay. Next up is, let's see. Samsung updates the Galaxy Watch 4. A Wall Street Journal has an article about Flock Freight, which uses AI to help shippers pool goods, raises $215 million, led by SoftBank. And Pinterest adds something called the Watch tab for videos, because they're going to get into social commerce. And Jack Ma has left China for the first time since the Alibaba crackdown. He's on his mega yacht off the coast of Ibiza with another billionaire friend or two. Okay, that is your big boring headlines for today, Thursday, October 21st. And now we get to get into our favorite tweets, which everyone's been patiently waiting for. Like this one. Evan found a motorcycle for Mars and the moon. The Lunar Cycle by NASA. It's a lunar motorcycle. It looks wild. So I just tweeted that out. And then Nerdstrom sends in this one. It says, breaking, Tesla has requested a meeting with Indian Prime Minister Modi because he wants to sell cars in India because they've got a few people who might want some Teslas. But India has an incredibly high, one of the world's highest import taxes on cars because India wants to have its own car industry for its huge market. But let's see if Elon can razzle-dazzle Mr. Modi. The next one's from Katerina from nature.com. It says, COVID reinfections likely within 1 to 2 years. Models propose estimates based on viral evolution forecasts, a 50% risk 17 months after the first infection, without measures such as masking and vaccination. People who have been infected by SARS-CoV-2, aka COVID-19, can expect to become reinfected within a year or two unless they take precautions such as getting vaccinated and wearing masks. That's the prediction of modeling based on genetic relationships between COVID-19 and other coronaviruses. The findings also warn that people could be reinfected in just a few months if they are not vaccinated. Immunity is relatively short-lived, says the study author Jeffrey Townsend, a bioinformatician at Yale School of Public Health in New Haven, Connecticut. You should still get vaccinated even if you've gotten infected, he says.
You know, Tyler,
Yes?
I was actually having coffee this morning, CNN, that cases are really rising. In Russia, they said the winter is coming and it can get even worse. And then the UK was even a confusing part because I think a majority of their population is vaccinated. But the health minister was talking that 16% rise, if I'm not wrong, to 46,000 infection that this week, daily infection, and he was projecting as much as to 100,000 to 200,000 infection per day, and they were talking about even having the majority of the population being vaccinated, how the kids is rising. So that's just too much, and what they have been saying this morning.
Same situation in Singapore.
Yes, not exactly the same because Russia doesn't have a good vaccine like Singapore did. So you're right. Russia is at an all-time high for cases and deaths and rising, and not slowly.
Tyler, there's some really good, interesting research coming. How in the 6 to 7 months you only have 15% protection for the virus with Pfizer, and there's some other interesting research coming out around that. So, yeah, it's gonna stick around for a while.
So there's a bunch of headlines in the past few hours about Russia and COVID. Here's some of them. Russia orders non-working week after record COVID deaths. President Putin has ordered the country's workers to stay off work for a week, starting later this month. And Moscow orders unvaccinated over 60 to stay home for 4 months as the COVID-19 crisis deepens in Russia. Russia to stay, and then the next one from AP News: Russians to stay off work for a week. Putin backs keeping workers at home as COVID deaths soar. Yep, looks like shit's getting real when you don't got a real vaccine. Okay, next up is we went through the big headlines. Now we're getting into the other ones. Saudamini found this one from in Economic Times in India. Clubhouse, you guys heard of this app? Clubhousey. is working on a localization of its Indian app. The move comes at a time when the audio-based live social networking space is heating up with increased competition. This is
Tyler,
yes.
I'm sorry.
This is
That's very interesting to me because the dialects, like that'll get messy or messerette. Like in Africa, when they can actually start cloning the dialects so that they don't have a local clone, copy it better. I think that's what Clubhouse is trying to figure out.
Clubhouse. Unfortunately, that one has a huge paywall on it, but that's a really interesting concept.
And I'm sorry, to clarify my thoughts, what I mean by is that you can't just do an English, Clubhouse in India. Like, you just clone it or skin it. It has to be in that local culture, dialect, that's what I'm stating. Like, it has to be that feel, that look and feel.
Well,
and that's what I think Clubhouse is trying to do, because if they don't, they won't go anywhere. No, they won't use it. That's what I mean.
So the next headline.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Messi.
No, I was just gonna say the exact same thing. There is even a Nigerian, I think, a startup that's we covered it yesterday. That's trying to do a digital, a digital education to the people, because a lot of these fintechs and medtechs, all these amazing, technology-based innovations in Africa is leaving behind a lot of people because they don't even speak English. So most of it is English and French. And in Africa, there are about, if I'm not wrong, that article said about 2,000 known languages. So a lot of them speak those languages, and there would be a big population to grab if they have the language correct.
Tyler, I see Vinay in the audience. Maybe he has a comment on this. And Ben is there too. Bitcoin Ben.
Okay. Let's see here. There's Vinay. Okay. A few people with their hands up here. Sorry, I wasn't watching closely. So the next one is from Vanity Fair, which is a American kind of media kind of focus, not really tech focused. I don't think we've ever read a single Vanity Fair headline before. Somebody Poppy shared this one. It says Mark Zuckerberg can't wash away Facebook's toxic image with a rebrand. After Facebook helped make our current reality unbearable, the embattled CEO reportedly wants to change his company's name as it expands into the metaverse. It's been a tough...
Let's call it dystopia.
It's been a tough... So anyway, I think we get the concept there. Media coming down very harsh on Facebook there. To that point, and by the way, we often highlight how the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and such have been incredibly focused on their jihad against Facebook in recent weeks, particularly. And yesterday, Barry Weiss, who used to be a leading journalist and even associate editor, if I recall correctly, at the New York Times, resigned a year ago. And she did an interview with CNN on kind of the 1-year anniversary of her departure. She decided to step down from her role at the New York Times. Columnist and blog. Oh, that's the Andrew Sullivan. Here's the other one. Where did it go? Here we go. Barry Weiss goes on CNN for an interview and explains how the media is actually the cause of the problems. Ex-New York Times journalist warns of corporate wokeness in media and industry, what happens in a kind of internal self-censorship. Former New York Times journalist Barry Weiss confronted CNN's Brian Stelter about his network's coverage of COVID-19 lab leak theory when listing examples of why the world has gone mad during Sunday's edition of what's called Reliable Sources. Weiss has written that many Americans feel the world has gone mad. So the left-wing CNN host asked her what she meant by her comment. And she explains, why she left the New York Times. because she was being bullied and harassed, and that it was an unsafe work environment. So, New York Times, journalists everywhere, where is the coverage that actually you have employees who don't feel safe at work, who are being badgered at work, who are you creating an hostile work environment, according to Barry Weiss, at the New York Times. The New York Times does not have 100,000 people like Facebook. So, what to make of people at your company saying that you've created a hostile work environment? What position are you in to continually harangue Facebook for similar charges? Similarly, Andrew Sullivan, on the same day 1 year ago, left the New Yorker for the same reasons. So, media, time to be a little more self-aware that you suffer from the exact same scenarios that you are so eager to attack your main economic opponents over at Facebook and big tech. You yourself have people resigning for the same reasons. So that's just a quick little update. The Barry Weiss interview with CNN was very interesting because when she says, that the world's going crazy because it's not possible. When the New York, she gave an example that the New York Times wrote a headline that investigating the origins of COVID is racist. What was a headline from the New York Times? She says, you're batshit fucking crazy. And this is the problem, that the New York Times has lost its goddamn mind when it thinks that investigating the origins of COVID is racist. So she resigned because she no longer shares the values of the New York Times. And we read articles every day, especially yesterday and especially in recent days, of a whole bunch of people at these companies, tech companies, who, instead of leaving, like Barry Weiss did from the New York Times or Andrew Sullivan did from the New Yorker, they want to have a walkout. Oh, and by the way, today, Netflix has a walkout of employees who are walking out because they don't agree that Netflix should have the David Chappelle special. And rather than do what Barry Weiss and Andrew Sullivan did at the New York Times and New Yorker, they're not walking out completely. They're not deciding, I don't share the same values of you, so I'm going to go work somewhere else. They're doing a walkout and demanding change. You should not have that content. We don't agree with that content. We want you to change your values. And the press jump all over that. The New York Times jumps all over that story, but is not so eager to jump on its own story of its own team members leaving because they don't share your values. So, Netflix, let's see if we can find an article on the update of the walkout. Netflix fired the employee. Let's see. Hold on one second. Walk out. Here, Netflix employees join wave of tech activism with walkout over Chappelle controversy. So this is today's article from The Guardian. It says, employees at Netflix halted work on Wednesday and staged a protest outside the company's Los Gatos, California headquarters to condemn the streaming platform's handling of complaints against David Chappelle's new special. The actions, which hundreds participated in, are the latest in a string of highly visible organizing efforts in the tech sector as workers increasingly take their grievances about company policies and decisions public. Here's a quote. 3 years ago, a worker walkout at a major tech company would have been unthinkable, says a labor law professor at University of California at Hastings. White-collar workers across the world now understand their labor power and their ability to change the unethical practices of their employer by withholding their labor. On Monday, the Transgender Employee Resources Group behind the walkout released a list of specific demands for Netflix, including more funding for trans creators, recruiting more diverse employees, and flagging anti-trans content on the platform. Tensions at Netflix started in early October when Netflix leaders doubled down on their support for the comedian David Chappelle following criticism from viewers. The queer media watchdog GLAAD, G-L-A-A-D, as well as some employees at Chappelle's news show contained jokes that weren't anti-trans. And as internal criticism grew, Netflix leaders continued to defend the special. Reed Hastings, the co-chief executive, reportedly said on an internal message board, "I do not believe that our commitment to artistic expression and pleasing our members is the right long-term choice for Netflix, and that we are on the right side, but only time will tell." The other CEO, Ted Sarandos, in an email obtained by Variety, says, "While some employees disagree, we have a strong belief that content on screen doesn't directly translate to real-world harm." He added, "Adults can watch violence, assault, and abuse, or enjoy shocking stand-up comedy without it causing them to harm others." The Sarandos memo in particularly fueled the walkout. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the memo was very disrespectful, a staffer told the outlet, on the condition of anonymity. It didn't invite a robust conversation about this hard topic, and that's normally how things go. Netflix fired it says it suspended Tara Field, a trans employee who had tweeted that Chappelle attacks the trans community and the very validity of transness, and tied such comments to real-world violence. The company said Field was suspended because she had attended a meeting she was not invited to, but it later conceded she had no ill intent. And Netflix fired another trans worker who had been involved in organizing the walkout on allegations of leaking internal documents to the press. Here's a quote: "We understand this employee may have been motivated by disappointment and hurt with Netflix, but maintaining a culture of trust and transparency is core to our company." The employee on Tuesday identified themselves as B. Pagels Minor in an interview with the New York Times and denied leaking sensitive information to the press. Social media event pages for the walkout have advertised a rally outside the Netflix headquarters in Los Angeles featuring public figures and speakers. Staffers participating in the virtual walkout have followed to halt work and focus on efforts to support the trans community. It says, this week alone, there have been protests at Netflix, Instacart, and Facebook. By Facebook's content moderators, Uber drivers, hundreds of Amazon workers, and walkouts have become an increasingly common tactic among tech employees. We are seeing a wave of them, says Jess Cooch, executive director at Solidarity Fund, which raises money to support employees engaged in workplace organizing. Google employees were among the first to deploy the strategy on a large scale in 2018. The incensed workers decried a culture of silence about sexual harassment and systemic racism and demanded Google make concrete changes to address such issues within the company. The Cooch noted tech employees studied other protest movements to determine the most effective forms of action, learning, for example, to release specific demands tied to their walkout. There is a degree of depth, commitment, and planning that was not present even just a few years ago. Organizers have particularly taken aim at the tools tech companies had long used to keep dissent internal. Faced with employee pressure, companies such as Google, Airbnb, Facebook, and eBay were compelled to end forced arbitration practices. Last month, California passed a law that makes it illegal for firms to prevent employees from speaking out about such issues through the use of NDAs.
Tyler, I'm sorry. What do you think the world is going crazy? I mean, is there a way where we just do a PG-13 for internal employees? Because I agree there can't be systemic racism and sexism and other things going on. But then where's the balance? Because do these companies just create robots and then people are out of a job? I mean, what's the other side of that coin? That's what I'm thinking.
Well, here's the other interesting thing. Their jobs are less secure than ever due to the new global work from home opportunity. Essentially, these companies are allowing people to work remotely forever. By the way, this journalist doesn't point out the fact that Netflix just decided precisely that. Henceforward, anyone can work from anywhere on the planet. Thusly, would you like to work for Netflix? Anybody on the planet? We are no longer hiring people in the tiny little microcosm of Los Gatos, where there is nobody left available to work. The unemployment rate is negative. There's people doing multiple jobs. So we now can hire outside of this 10 square kilometers, and we have the whole fucking planet to hire from. Are you making, not to mention the AIs are improving as you protest out in front of your office. Are you paying attention,
And just to let,
dear protesters?
so, sorry, Tyler, just to let you know, as of today, there's 493 open positions at Netflix in India, as of like 5 minutes ago.
Wow.
Wow.
Comment of the
Thanks,
day
Renee.
right there. Well done, Vinay. Precisely. Oh, you're having a walkout? Oh, that's so terrible. Hello, India office? Yes, we have. How many of you are walking out again? 500? Okay, great. Okay, yes. Go ahead and put the 500 on that. Oh, by the way, that's great. You're walking out. Could you do us a favor? Could you let us know who's walking out and what their roles are in the company? You just go ahead and send them over by lunchtime. Thank you. Yeah. Here you go, India. Go ahead, and these are the new opportunities that we're hiring for.
And to your point, Tyler, it just saddens me, but it's good that you do what you do, and that's why I'm here.
By the way, what are
the
your
journalists are.
salaries here in Los Gatos again? $150,000, is it? Right. Okay.
I was
Dear,
going to say that cheap labor.
dear India, yes. Is 50,000 a good salary in India? It is. Okay, great. We just saved ourselves
It's luxury.
100,000 per person.
But I was saying that, it's sad because I think the journalists, the ones who aren't doing a good job, Tyler, are stroking these fames. And it's
Yep.
unfortunate because I think in the past, Facebook or whatever, that's almost like reality TV. Because I'm old enough to remember this, but it's reality TV versus scripted TV. And the journalists had a responsibility to at least tell more of the truth and to be more accurate. And that's what we depend on versus, social media, where we're all trying to be our own little journalists. So it's just a sad thing when I see it swinging so fast. But
Well, but the point is isn't it an interesting coincidence that these walkouts and protests are happening precisely at the time when the workforce is going global?
and more automated and AI. So you're exactly right. Yeah.
So I don't think these companies are sweating these people protesting. And this, what Vinay just revealed, highlights that point perfectly. There's the
Yeah, and a lot of the roles that they're
Vinay,
hiring for,
are not the
yeah.
Indian folks who come on to work for a third of the price of the people in San Francisco, if not a quarter. Correct me if I'm wrong. That I don't think they're going to have a problem with the David Chappelle special.
No, not really. And honestly, a lot of these jobs are for India roles. Like one of the big things in Netflix is Squid Game has shown that international content is sometimes going to outdo content that's created in the US. So Netflix is actually doubling down on countries like Korea, India, and other countries to create content that is going to just go everywhere, right? So they don't need to be as US centric as they used to.
So
Even from a content
here's a
perspective.
question. When Barry Weiss and Andrew Sullivan leave the New York Times and the New York Post because their values aren't really in alignment with their employer, and they say, I'm out, right? Why don't tech people at big tech jobs do the same? Well, I think I know the answer. Because the New York Times doesn't really pay very well, and the big tech companies do. And I can give you the receipts on that if you want. Journalists don't really make that much. So it's not really worth fighting about. It's not really worth protesting about. Like I'm not going to fight to stay at a job that doesn't really pay me much anyways. Where these big tech companies actually pay quite well. And so they're not so fast to just walk out the door. Interesting. Okay. A few more quick headlines here is, that Clubhouse India one. Twitter launches first community in India for cricket fans. Because Twitter's launching communities like Facebook groups. And they're testing this out, and they've launched the first one in India for cricket fans. And we will see how that all shapes up. The next one is a Florida restaurant robot is making a big difference for employees. This Florida restaurant's robot is making a big difference. You'd think that restaurant employees would feel threatened by robots, but at this Florida business, the technology is actually helpful for staff. I just tweeted that out. And there's this big robot delivering sushi to a customer at his table. In the face of unprecedented restaurant labor shortages, some establishments are turning to a futuristic form of technology that aims to alleviate the workload of servers, namely robots. The New York Times revealed how hospitality-oriented robots are on the rise among frustrated restaurateurs and business owners struggling to find workers during the pandemic. There you go. You played yourself. You thought, you know what? We're all going to stay at home until you start offering us a decent wage. And the restaurateurs are like, they started getting a lot of emails in their inboxes saying, "Hi, I'm Bobby the robot. I'll work for half the price of that human that will no longer come to work. By the way, I can't get COVID.
And I don't strike.
By the way, I'll never strike. And by the way,
You just got to give me some oil once
are
in a
you
while,
only
like the
open
Jetsons.
from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.? I can work all day and night. Why don't you go 24 hours? It won't cost you any more
And I have no emotions.
It won't cost you any more to be open to become a 24-hour restaurant now. How's that sound?
By the way, I won't trash the restaurant to try to get onto a rap video.
Okay.
That was one of the funniest headlines last week. The Subway sandwich guy who went berserk.
And then at the end, he's like, somebody's got to clean this shit up.
And Tyler, does that mean as a customer, I don't have to tip the waitress or waiter
Oh,
anymore?
snap. Oh, snap.
Because, from the Eastern world, it's not the custom here with that we tip. Because it included in the fee we pay for our food. So every time I go to America, I feel so weird, If you see a meal like priced at 50, actually you have to pay like 65 or 70 actually. Yeah, that's something.
20%, right?
Yes,
That's the thing I have to do. And I don't
15.
understand as well.
You just saved 15% of the cost of going to a restaurant as a customer.
Yeah.
The New York Times
Because
revealed how hospitality robots are on the rise among frustrated restaurateurs and businesses owners struggling to find workers during the pandemic. Here's a quote. The leisure and hospitality industry saw a 50% drop in employment in 2020. Jamie Richardson, vice president of marketing at White Castle, told the publication, this is far and away the worst shock to the industry on record, dating back to the Great Depression in the 1920s. For Carlos Gazzutia, owner and CEO of Florida-based Sergio's Restaurants, it was nearly impossible to find workers to fill job vacancies after COVID-19 restrictions allowed Florida restaurants to reopen indoor dining. The solution to his staff scarcity came in the form of Servy, a food service robot developed by Bear Robotics and SoftBank Robotics Group. Bear Robots co-founder and CEO said demand for a robot has surged among restaurants, casinos, and other locations with overwhelmed staff. The Servy robot operates in modes including drink serving, food running, busing, allowing business owners to maximize their operating efficiency while also elevating service quality to customers. elevating service quality. Higher quality, says SoftBank
You
Robotics.
don't have to deal with the bad moods of server.
At the restaurant, the server carries plates from the kitchen to the dining room where they are picked up by servers who give them to customers. According to the New York Times, the robots have laser sensors and cameras that allow them to move through spaces safely. In addition to providing some extra manpower around the restaurant, the server robots have actually helped human servers get better tips. His waitstaff now has more time to interact with customers and serve more tables without the stress of hustling in and out of the kitchen. After testing this device in one of his chain's locations, the owner ordered service for all 5 full-service locations. Each robot operates at a fee of $1,000 a month. Oh, clever robot owners don't want to sell the robots because they're too valuable. $1,000 a month.
That's not that. I mean, that's a good price. I mean, those robots cost about 20 grand. So
Yeah, I think it's good because they also take care of servicing, right?
Yes, and Cheryl, isn't there a lot of robots still in Japan? Because I know in China
Oh,
there's a
yes, of
couple of
course.
hotels. Well, there's one hotel that's fully robotic. I mean, literally, you check in, it's automated.
It's just
And
behind my house, within 1-2 minutes walk. It's called Henna Hotel. But
oh,
a family restaurant called Skylark just started to roll a lot of robots in the family restaurant too.
They have one staff in the behind the room. You mean the or robotic hotel, but they still need one person.
Yeah. But to be honest, do we still need those people to come to order food? We can always order on an app, right? And then we don't even need to interact with anybody. Then we can cut away all those those tips in US, because I sometimes find them pretty irritating because they just come and try to chit chat with you because implying that, of course, please give me more tips, right? And sometimes I don't really need those
Well,
interaction.
move to Thailand. We don't
Maybe it's
tip
just
here.
me. Yeah, in Japan
Cheryl,
too.
that's when you just like be Cheryl and you like, hey, why are you coming over here to talk to me so
No,
much? You just
it's
wanted
no.
more
Sometimes,
tips, huh?
sometimes it's so fake. It's like,
Yeah,
I know what you want.
please,
You
I
just
don't
want
want.
tips.
system.
I know why you're so nice to me. You just want tips.
No, it's not that.
No,
Sometimes
Yeah,
you
but if
can
you
yeah,
said
tell.
sure,
that,
yeah,
they would get so
agree.
You can
uncomfortable
tell
they
when it's a
wouldn't know what to
genuine
do.
discussion. You can tell when they're just doing it for the sake of doing it.
That's
You know what I'm
the
trying to
Cheryl
say?
quote right there. I can tell
Yeah, of
I can tell
course.
you just want my money.
I can feel the
I,
energy. Who is real? Who is not?
I
No
agree with
but
BS.
her.
but in the West, guys, I got to be real because I'm on both sides. In the West, I've done that, and we've been in restaurants, $200, $300, and the Chinese or Asians will be like, okay, here's a fee, and the waiters are looking at me like, what the WTF? Because they will pay like to the penny. So, oh, it's $300. Here's $301. So everyone's going cuckoo, and so it's a culture thing, is what I'm saying.
And I grew up in restaurants, Cheryl. You know why I'm able to talk and deal with people is all the time I've spent in restaurants dealing with people that are angry and hungry, and
I
you know
know, Chris.
I got an extra layer added in that it was my mom's restaurant. So if people were
Yeah.
pissed at me and I wanted to
Poor
tell them to
boy.
fuck off, I couldn't because it was my
Yeah.
mom's restaurant.
But what I'm saying is you should put the price of that tip into the cost of the food so that because I'm live in Japan for so long, good service is taken for granted, right? So the worst
I,
thing you want is go to US and then this bad service, and yet you're obliged to tip them 15
you're
twenty
not
percent
obliged if
Like,
it's
you're
bad
not
service.
obliged.
Yeah, see,
no,
that's
they
the
will
problem,
I've
though.
they will
never.
Cheryl, I'm
I
face.
think
sorry,
the
but the
system.
problem is it's legal. That's what's weird. We have this great bullshit area, and you're right. I agree. It should really be like in Asia, because here you can't legally enforce what someone's going to tip you. You'll have all kind
It's
of
a
legal rights
courtesy. It's a
saying,
thank you. No, it really is a thank you. Like I'll tell you, as a waiter, I've only not tipped a table once in my entire life, and it's got to be terrible service.
It's
Eh,
a
eh,
structure problem. I think because the owner of the restaurant, they made you believe that the waiter should do it extra work to gain. So that's why they gave the salary so low, then make them force them to get those tips. So if it's structured that is included in the fee for the food. Then, just like Jared said, what do we expect in Japan or in Thailand or here in Taiwan? It's what you should do as a waiter, waitress. It's not something extra you should do.
Well, here's the thing: is my mom spent her life. I am Taiwanese. My mom worked at the Hyatt Hotel in Taipei. Slugging in the coffee shops and stuff. And we made our living that way. And we came from New York with $200. And I never saw my mother because she was in the restaurant from 6 o'clock till 9 p.m. at night. And we busted our ass. And she got me through college. And she made tips. And for that reason,
Yeah.
this is important to
We
me.
respect the culture in America, so I tip there as well. But I
I
just
mean,
say we
it's the
don't
only
get
place in
used
the
to it.
world where a
Yeah.
poor Taiwanese woman can raise a person that becomes the CEO of a startup. And maybe I do nothing with my life, but it's the fact that there's the opportunity to do it is why I'm proud to be an American.
Oh no, it's not
And but
true,
Chris,
Chris. It's
but
not just
Chris, to that point,
America.
I'm sorry, but Chris, to that point, you're right on both sides. You are the example. Maybe I am a little bit not as good as you, but then there's people that abuse it because you have the lazy, like you said, server who expects a 20% or
You got
15% tip.
you got to see my wife. My wife is
Yeah,
gorgeous.
so
My
I don't
wife
know.
is gorgeous, and she slogged through that dirty little restaurant, and she made more money than anybody I'd ever seen because she knew how to work a room authentically. You have to connect authentically with people in this industry, and
And
people
then bring
see
them the
right through
food,
it
and,
and
and
stay.
you're right, and bring them the service and bring them the
So
food.
don't leave them a tip. If people don't connect with you, don't leave them a tip. It's like people up here on Clubhouse. If you don't like them, don't follow.
Okay, but anyhow, in US, we as tourists, we are kind of like have this feeling that we are obliged to do it. But what I'm trying to say here is, Chris, your mom works hard. That's very respectable. But if she works hard, she can make a living, good living anywhere in the world, not just USA.
Okay, so Sudamini found one that a fake Squid Game app is is in the stores, and it has malware found on Google Play Store. There's unsurprisingly a flurry of Squid Game apps on the Play Store and one with malware too. So be careful out there. And Google may face a fine of up to 20% of its annual turnover in Russia. The Russian government agency said it would now seek a fine of up to 20% of Google's Russian revenue. Russia's taking 20% of Google as a fine. If you want to keep doing,
That's a lot big. That's a lot better than the $10,000 fines they were doing
yeah,
before.
they're getting wise. They realize is it just me or do these big American trillion-dollar companies not care about our $10,000 fines? I'm getting the impression these aren't really working. So how's 20% of your company sound? They went from 0 to 100 real quick there. So Google might be leaving
Yeah,
Russia.
but it's only Russian revenues, which is 85 billion rubles.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody do the math, 20% of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how big that is.
So then Facebook, according to Wall Street Journal, Facebook, Roblox see the metaverse as key to the internet's next phase. Yes, they do.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
According to the Wall Street Journal, Facebook and Roblox see the metaverse as key to the internet's next phase.
Yes, fifth iteration.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've been tracking that reality for many months now. Welcome to the world, Wall Street Journal. We're in October 2021. Welcome. There's this thing called the metaverse. And according to the Washington Post, inaction on climate change imperils millions of lives, doctors say. An exploding body of evidence shows that warming will worsen hunger, spread disease, exacerbate chronic illness, and wreak havoc on humanity. Yep. Sure seems that way. AI can see through you, according to Reuters. CEO's language under machine microscope. Executives beware. You could become your own worst enemy. Some investors use AI to learn and analyze their language patterns and tone of CEOs, a new tool to gain an edge over rivals. Reuters did interviews with 11 fund managers that are using or trailing such systems. I happen to know one very well who has built an incredibly amazing AI system about which startups they invest in. And they collect all kinds of amazing data points.
Tyler,
Yes.
I have a news item that I tweeted to you yesterday about Accenture. I don't know if you saw that. It's not the Facebook moderation thing, but Accenture. We were talking about hiring earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Accenture is going to go to 300,000 employees in India in next year. They have 250,000. So in the next 12 months, they're hiring 50,000 people in India.
Mm. Yeah, India. This is why I said when this whole global work from anywhere thing started, I said India is going to benefit from this more than anybody because it's the highest competence, lowest cost, English speaking spot on the planet. You're going to kill it. Absolutely kill it. So there you go. Good luck to all of those Google big tech strikers, big tech protesters, Sunil and Akhil, and there's a billion people in India hoping you protest, applauding you on your protest. You go, girl. You do that protest. I will happily do your job for a third of the price. So we will pause there, and we will meet again in just over 5 hours. Is there a room before Tech News before we meet next time? Do click on the title of the room, follow the Tech News Club, and then the next room is Tech News Around the World, and then we have a blockchain room after that. So
no, blockchain room is on Friday.
Okay, so go ahead and
Tyler.
Yes, LS.
Oh, just one other thing. Mbwana came up. I don't know if he had something to share.
Okay.
From I just saw them. I don't know, but
anything shaking, Mbwana?
No.
Okay. He's listening in as he normally does.
Okay,
everybody. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful Subway sandwich.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Without the wrap.
Fake tuna.